Chapter 948. Early in the morning, Fong Beibei's surprised scream pierced through the sky of the Sheraton Hotel. "Uncle, how did you get so many autographs?" Gary Jiang, Song Jixiao, Jin Zhonghua, Li Guangzhu, Pond Rock Town. Lu Zaishi and Haha also have autographs? And more? And Han Huizhen and Li Dongxiu. I'm not familiar with these two. Fong Beibei put the autographs aside. She held the stack of autographs in her hands and sat on the bed. She raised her head and asked Poplar Fruit curiously, "How did you get so many?" "After you fell asleep yesterday, they came to find me." Poplar Fruit laughed. It turned out that after Lu Zaishi and Haha went back, they told everyone about their encounter with Poplar Fruit. They were all very surprised, but because they were recording the show, they did not have time to be distracted. Very late at night, at Golden Sands Casino, they finished recording the last segment and found out that the hotel they stayed in was the Sheraton Hotel. This reminded Lu Zaishi of the room key that Poplar Fruit handed to him. Therefore, they found the room number of Poplar Fruit based on the recorded video and found the door. "Why didn't you wake me up?" Fong Beibei complained. "You were already asleep. How could I bear to wake you up?" Yonghua smiled and reached out to help Fong Beibei, who had just woken up, brush away a strand of hair that naughtily ran to her forehead. "Later, I found out that in addition to Li Guangzhu, Li Dongxi was also a model, so after a short chat, I also helped you get an autograph." "Are they still there now?" Fong Beibei asked expectantly. "Not anymore." Poplar Fruit shook his head and said, "I heard that they were leaving for Thailand early in the morning. They should be on the plane now." "Okay. I want to get up, brush my teeth and wash my face. After a good night's sleep, I'm full of energy again. Let's continue to go out and play today." Fong Beibei did not feel regretful. She smiled brightly, stretched, and lifted the quilt. "Speaking of fun, there is a good place to choose." Yonghua laughed. "Macau Tower. I heard from Brother Shi that they went out to have fun while they were doing a mission yesterday. Song Jixiao even went bungee jumping." Song Jixiao was famous among the running men for being bold and not afraid of heights. Even Jin Zhonghua, who had the strongest muscles, could not compare to her boldness. Poplar Fruit's eyes sparkled when he talked about their bungee jumping. He really wanted to try it out. "Really? I really want to play too. I've been on roller coasters and vertical lifts before, but I've never done bungee jumping." Fong Beibei's eyes also revealed a trace of desire. She grabbed Poplar Fruit's hand and looked at Poplar Fruit with some excitement. Fong Beibei was usually not brave, but after all, she was a young person who had not yet reached the age of 20. She had a playful and adventurous heart. As for Poplar Fruit, this guy was a bold guy before he practiced kung fu. When he was young, he climbed coconut trees with his bare hands. Now that he was skilled, he was even bolder. He even dared to climb out of the window without any protective equipment. He climbed at the height of 17 floors like Spider-Man. "Yes, we can also jump together." Poplar Fruit laughed. "But let's go bungee jumping." Fong Beibei was also eager, but she thought of a very realistic problem. What about Kiki? This was indeed a problem. Poplar Fruit turned to look at Kiki, who was still sleeping, and said, "How about this? Let's go shopping first. When it's almost noon, we'll go to Macau Tower. When Kiki falls asleep, we'll ask the staff to help take care of her, and then we'll go play." So today Poplar Fruit's trip often appeared this scene. "Kiki, if you're sleepy, you can sleep in Papa's arms." Poplar Fruit hugged Kiki and patted her back gently. "Kiki is not sleepy." Kiki giggled, thinking that her father was playing with her. Instead, she grabbed her father's ear energetically and cried, "Kiki wants to play with Papa." Poplar Fruit had no choice but to continue to wander around Macau with Fong Beibei and Kiki. Then, like yesterday, they found a restaurant near Macau Tower to rest until it was almost 2 o'clock at noon. After eating lunch and drinking milk, Kiki finally couldn't resist her pajamas and slowly fell asleep. Poplar Fruit smiled, took Fong Beibei's hand, and went straight to Macau Tower. It seemed that because the Running Man crew had been here yesterday, there were a lot of people in Macau Tower today. Many young couples came to Macau Tower to look at the large posters that had been developed overnight. They were all taken by the staff during the filming yesterday. One of them was Song Jixiao jumping bungee jumping and laughing excitedly in mid-air, which attracted many tourists. Song Jixiao was the kind of real, mature and natural beauty who was not eye-catching at first glance, but became more and more beautiful the more you looked at her. Moreover, her temperament was also very likable, which was rare in South Korea. "We want to play this," Fang Beibei said as she bit Poplar Fruit's ear. Poplar Fruit lowered his head and nodded in agreement. They took the elevator up to the sightseeing floor 223 meters above the ground. Here, tourists were still bustling, but there were not many people near the bungee jumping platform. After all, there were still very few people in this world who liked extreme sports. Looking down from the sightseeing floor, the people on the ground could not be seen clearly. The houses and cars looked like tiny ants. Just imagine, falling from such a high place, even if there was a protective device, it would still make one's adrenaline rush. Not to mention the tourists on the sightseeing floor who were afraid of heights and felt weak in the knees. Therefore, when Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei excitedly bought bungee jumping tickets, the surrounding tourists looked at them with a tragic gaze, some with admiration, and some with worry. Kiki, who was sleeping, was being taken care of by a female staff member. When Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei came back from downstairs, they would take the little girl back. Xiaohan knew that this was not reasonable, but please believe that it was possible for the time being. Because it was a couple's ticket, after Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei put on protective clothing, the staff member used an iron buckle to fasten Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei together. Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei's fingers were interlocked. He lowered his head and smiled warmly at Fang Beibei, who was looking up. The tourists behind the protective line were envious and jealous. They all sighed and said, "What a good match, but showing affection is too torturous." Ignoring other people's comments, Poplar Fruit said gently, "Come on." Fang Beibei also nodded. The two of them held hands and walked together to the walkway leading to the gangplank. As soon as they walked out, they felt the biting cold wind outside. Fang Beibei's hair was blown up, and she quickly tied it up with the hairband on her wrist. First of all, the guide loudly told Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei some things to pay attention to. Poplar Fruit listened, but Fang Beibei held Poplar Fruit's hand tightly. She was a little scared. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 949. Although Running_Man and his crew had just finished filming in Macau and had flown to Thailand for the filming of the next attraction, the crazy fans, as well as some attractions or businessmen who could not wait to make a fortune from their fans, had already leaked the photos and videos they had taken on the internet. What everyone enjoyed the most was the photo of Song Jixiao, giving a thumbs up in surprise while hanging in mid-air after jumping bungee jumping. This female star, who had the spirit of a tough girl and the feelings of a soft girl, once again won people's praise for her unpretentious performance. Spoiler, guests had always been something that fans liked to do. Not only the fans in South Korea, but the millions of Running_Man fans in China also started to study the fan posts on the Tieba forum, as if they were playing a game of looking for trouble. They were guessing which Korean celebrities would appear on the forum. Han Huijian and Lee Dongwook were quickly identified. After all, after they were found, they had been participating in the later segments and had a high appearance rate. It was not surprising that they were recognized by Korean fans. Just when everyone thought that they had found everyone, a forum user suddenly raised a post, as if he had discovered a new continent. Do you know who he is? The first photo was not very clear, but it could be seen that Lu Zaishi and Haha nodded and bent over to shake hands with Poplar Fruit. In the next few photos, Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei came out of the private room. It could be seen that they were talking, but because it was taken with a mobile phone, the hands were shaking and the pixels were low, so their faces could not be seen clearly. There was one photo that was slightly clearer, but it was also covered by Kiki, who was in Poplar Fruit's arms. The original poster said, "He looks like a passerby, but he also doesn't look like a passerby. He even chatted with the guru for so long. He's definitely not a nobody. From afar he definitely looks handsome. Look at those long legs. I'm about to cry because of how handsome he is. Can any friends in the know come out and identify him? He should be some oppa from South Korea. Who in our country can be so tall?" The original poster was probably a fan who had been following the Korean entertainment industry for a long time, but his words angered many people in the country. After all, no matter how good the outside world is, I won't allow anyone to say anything bad about our country. The OP suffered a lot of criticism, but it also made these photos available to more people. Isn't this Kiki? There would always be fans of Kiki and Poplar Fruit who saw them. They were so surprised that they brought out the photos of Kiki and Poplar Fruit in the Happy Base camp to compare them. That's right, my daughter who looked like she was carved out of jade was Kiki. She had delicate features and was still as cute as ever. So that tall man is Poplar Fruit? The most memorable thing about Poplar Fruit was the various slanderous rumors that he had encountered. There were even fans who thought that Poplar Fruit had been hit by these rumors and had been frozen by some unknown department or person. However, the most unforgettable thing about Poplar Fruit was his long legs, which were more than a meter long. Many of his female fans would drool at the sight of them. How could it be wrong? It's definitely Poplar Fruit. Many netizens have basically confirmed the identity of Poplar Fruit and fiercely attacked the OP who was laughing. Look, who said that there are no handsome long-legged oppas in our country? Isn't Poplar Fruit one of them? The netizens were very proud of what they said. However, because the OP didn't appear for a long time, no one continued to make a fuss, and the floor began to slowly shift to another topic. If it's Poplar Fruit and Kiki, then the other woman should be the beautiful Fong Beibei. It's not certain whether it's her or not. By the way, why did they appear in Ouching? Did they receive an invitation from the Running_Man crew? Nonsense, didn't Poplar Fruit say that he has quit the entertainment industry? Then it must be our Poplar Fruit Appa who had no choice but to say it. He was ostracized in China, so he could only go abroad to develop his career. Nonsense, if Running_Man invited Poplar Fruit, why didn't I see him appear later? Hey, I have a photo from my friend's Weibo. It seems to be Poplar Fruit, and the other's bungee jumping. Can it prove that he also participated? When everyone began to study the blurry photo, conspiracy theories began to be rampant. Many netizens ran to Weibo, or at him on Weibo, or simply left a message under Poplar Fruit's Weibo to ask questions. He didn't expect that he would receive a response from Yang Guo, a rare occurrence in 100 years. This was also because Poplar Fruit was in a good mood recently. When he was bored at night, he could look at Weibo. Ouching was not like everyone's usual situation. When they went there, they didn't dare to turn on their mobile phone data or make calls. As long as they had money, the mobile phone signal in Ouching was better, and the Wi-Fi coverage was wider. Poplar Fruit was in a hotel room, and he could surf the internet through the hotel's wireless network. Seeing that some fans were quarreling on the internet, Poplar Fruit happily posted a Weibo announcement to everyone. Relax, this time I went to Ouching mainly to attend the translation seminar with my mentor. However, I took my girlfriend and daughter to Ouching for 2 days in advance. I actually met the Running_Man crew at Fisherman's Wharf. I'm so lucky, haha. Then his second Weibo was also posted, and it was still a picture Weibo. Poplar Fruit said, "My girlfriend is a loyal fan of Running_Man. She was very lucky to take a photo with Lu Zixi and haha. She was very happy." Later, I heard that Running_Man went to the Tower of Macau, and we also went to experience bungee jumping the next day. Well, the following photos may be a bit of a public display of affection. Everyone be careful, haha. Poplar Fruit posted a total of 2 photos. One was a photo of them with Lu Zixi and haha, and the other was a photo of Fong Beibei hanging on Poplar Fruit. The two of them were fully armed, and were about to jump out of the Tower of Macau. After Poplar Fruit's 2 Weibo posts were posted, they went viral. The most commented on was the photo of him and Fong Beibei bungee jumping. Netizens said with jealousy that Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei's public display of affection was too much. The female fans envied that Fong Beibei was pampered by such a handsome man like Poplar Fruit, while the male fans lamented that Poplar Fruit was really a winner in life. He had a beautiful female top student as his girlfriend, the cute Kiki that everyone loved, and fame, status, and money. The conspiracy theory was broken by Poplar Fruit's clarification, but this matter was not over. Some online media, such as Tungsan News, used the photos posted by Poplar Fruit and some photos dug up by netizens to hype up Poplar Fruit's matter again. Some media even dug up the translation seminar that Poplar Fruit was going to attend. Therefore, Poplar Fruit became popular again. There were even celebrities and reporters who privately lamented, although Poplar Fruit is no longer in the entertainment industry, he still has a reputation that is not inferior to ordinary A-list celebrities. So what? Poplar Fruit still has to continue to be busy with his translation seminar work in Macau. How can he continue to pay attention to the changes in the domestic situation? Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 950. Are you all going out tonight? Fong Beibei pouted and stood on the bed to tie Poplar Fruit's tie. She asked, "The day before yesterday was a banquet. Yesterday was your group dinner. Today you are going out to play together. Can't you stay with me tonight?" Since the beginning of the seminar, Poplar Fruit began to feel a little busy. The main reason was that these professors and the leaders of the association were too bureaucratic. They had all kinds of social engagements. During the day, the meetings were serious, but at night they were either eating, drinking, or having fun. Because the seminar was at Aoqing University, which was several kilometers away, Poplar Fruit had to take a half-hour car ride every time he went out to meet them, so he often went out early and came back late. Originally, Poplar Fruit planned to turn down those social engagements tonight, but the professors in Guangdong province said that everyone would get together, so Poplar Fruit had to go. Chen Zongdai told him that he had to be good at maintaining and making use of his connections. It was not easy to maintain them. If he had the opportunity to get to know his colleagues in Guangdong province, it would be of great help to his future career. Therefore, Poplar Fruit was still told by Chen Zongdai on the phone that he had to go no matter what. However, after midnight tonight, it would be Fong Beibei's birthday. Poplar Fruit was helpless. He kissed Fong Beibei on the cheek and comforted her. "There's really no way. But baby, don't worry. I'll come back quickly. Anyway, I'm not the protagonist. I'll sneak back when I have the chance." Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were laughing, but one person was not happy. The following plot was inspired by a video on Weibo. Xiao Han first expressed his gratitude and apology to the original author. Kiki climbed onto the big bed from the ground next to her. She put her hands on her hips, stuck out her small belly, looked up at her father, and said in a childish voice, Papa, you go out to eat every day. Kiki doesn't like you anymore." The little fellow's words sounded a little sullen and aggrieved, which surprised Poplar Fruit. He went forward to hug Kiki, but Kiki angrily turned her head away. "Kiki, what's the matter?" Poplar Fruit had to sit by the bed and reach out to hold the little fellow's hand. Kiki had just finished bathing and drying her hair, so her long hair was still a little fluffy. She turned her head and looked at her father with her small eyebrows twisted. She said, "Papa, you always have a show every day, every day. It wasn't like this before." Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Beibei in surprise. Fong Beibei was also dumbfounded. She spread out her hands in confusion and amusement, indicating that she had never taught Kiki to say these words. "Come back." When I came back, Kiki was already asleep. Kiki lowered her head. Her two small hands intertwined with each other, but her mouth was still complaining. "Papa, Papa, how could you come back now?" The word "come" was dragged out, and her childish voice sounded very bitter. Poplar Fruit could only pull the little fellow into his arms, hug her, kiss her twice, and apologize. Papa was wrong. Papa was wrong. And Kiki criticized Papa. It was for your own good. Kiki still had no intention of stopping. She raised her small nose, then used her hand to touch her father's face, and said, "I'll let you know what a good papa is." Poplar Fruit suddenly remembered what he often said when he criticized her. "Dad criticized you for your own good, you know? You have to know what kind of child is a good child." He didn't expect Kiki's memory to be so good. Everything that Poplar Fruit said to her was now returned to him word for word. He saw the little fellow counting with her hands, and said, "Strong, brave, sensible, obedient, polite, that's what a good papa is." She really recited. These were all things that Poplar Fruit had told her before. Fong Beibei was already shaking with laughter at the side, but she didn't intend to interrupt the father and daughter's conversation. She only covered her mouth and secretly laughed. Poplar Fruit helplessly looked at her, rubbed Kiki's head, and said with a sincere expression, "Good child, Dad knows he was wrong." Oh, Kiki only stopped for a moment, but she immediately pouted her small mouth. Two small hands grabbed her father's face, and asked, Then Papa has to bring his phone with him?" "Yes. Dad always has his phone with him." Poplar Fruit nodded, and took out his phone and shook it. But Kiki, in the morning, when she called you, Papa always hung up the phone." The little fellow wrinkled her small nose and said unhappily, "Ah." Poplar Fruit scratched his head. He looked at Kiki in surprise and asked, "Was it you?" During the day, Poplar Fruit was in a meeting, waiting about 5 minutes before it was his turn to speak. Seeing Fong Bei's call, he hurriedly turned it off, but then she called again. He could only quickly reply with a text message, "Wait a minute," and then turned off the phone. Fong Bei was lying on the bed, laughing. She turned over, holding her stomach, looked at Poplar Fruit and said, "Kiki secretly took my phone." Poplar Fruit was helpless, and also laughed. Kiki was not happy. She glanced at her father, snorted and said, "You're still laughing." In the end, Poplar Fruit kept apologizing and guaranteeing, and asked for his daughter's consent. When going out, Poplar Fruit whispered to Fong Bei, "I'll try to come back early, and I'll bring a cake. Don't tell Kiki, or else she won't sleep again." "Hee, you're so bad. How can there be such a bad father?" Fong Bei looked up at Kiki, who was holding her hand in confusion, and whispered to Poplar Fruit, "Oh, Kiki also wants to hear." The little fellow faintly felt the existence of the conspiracy, and said unhappily, "I didn't say anything. I just said that Daddy will come back early tonight." Poplar Fruit smiled and hugged Kiki, kissed her on the cheek and said, "I want to come back and tell Kiki stories." Kiki hugged her father's neck, and said a little coquettishly, no matter how much she criticized, her father was still her father, and he was still the father that Kiki wanted to be by her side every day. "And then, Daddy will remember. Come, give Daddy a kiss," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Moi." Kiki obediently kissed her father's face, then wiped her saliva, and giggled. After handing Kiki to Fong Bei, Poplar Fruit went up and hugged the two girls again. Fong Bei reluctantly pulled Poplar Fruit's hand, looked at him affectionately and said softly, "Come back early." Poplar Fruit nodded hard, turned around, and walked towards the elevator. Although his teacher said that tonight's gathering was very important, Poplar Fruit himself had already made plans. At most, he would get to know them and then sneak away. What could be more important than Fong Bei, who was about to turn 20 years old tonight, and who was already a budding flower? Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 951. Teacher, I'm leaving. At the gathering of his peers in Guangdong Province, Poplar Fruit had attracted a lot of attention because of the translation theory he had proposed in the past year. However, as everyone ate, drank, and played, he gradually faded out of everyone's sight. However, before Poplar Fruit sneaked away, he still had to inform Chen Zongdai. "You're a good-for-nothing." Chen Zongdai reprimanded Poplar Fruit with some dissatisfaction. This disciple of Poplar Fruit was good in every way, but he was a little unmotivated. In his opinion, as a man, it was right to value relationships. However, under the balance of the two, career was completely tied up by family. This was not qualified. Ehe. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Teacher, you know Bei's birthday is tomorrow. I have to accompany her no matter what." Go. Looking at you is annoying." Chen Zongdai waved his hand and drove Poplar Fruit away. However, he added, "Happy birthday to her for me." Hehe, thank you, teacher. I'm leaving." Poplar Fruit ran away like a wisp of smoke. Good for nothing. Chen Zongdai looked at his anxious back and shook his head. Poplar Fruit ran to the dessert shop to get the cake. Then he happily rushed back to the hotel. "I'm back." Poplar Fruit was at the door. He was not in a hurry to open the door. Instead, he sent a message to his girlfriend. "She's outside. Is she asleep?" After a while, the door gently opened. Poplar Fruit could see Fong Bei's big eyes carefully looking outside. They were bright in the dark. After confirming that it was Poplar Fruit, She happily pulled them apart. Then, just like how Kiki welcomed her father back, she also rushed forward and hugged Poplar Fruit's waist. Kiki is asleep. I've been talking about you for a long time. You have to apologize to Kiki tomorrow, Fong Beibei said. Poplar Fruit raised his hands and pulled the cake and flowers away from her. He lowered his head and sniffed Fong Beibei's hair. He smiled and said, "Baby, you smell so good. Tell me honestly, have you secretly opened the gifts to look at them?" Fong Beibei raised her head and giggled. Patting Poplar Fruit's chest, she lowered her voice and said, "Of course not. If I secretly opened it, wouldn't it be meaningless? Let's go, we'll talk when we get back." Poplar Fruit smiled and returned to the room with his girlfriend. Then, he placed the cake on the table and handed the bouquet of flowers to Fong Beibei. "Why is it cake and flowers?" Fong Beibei held the flowers. She was still very happy, but she said, "How expensive is it to buy flowers in Macau? What's there to be afraid of?" Poplar Fruit walked behind Fong Beibei and hugged her from behind. He whispered in her ear, "I have to learn to be romantic. You're dressed so beautifully tonight." When Fong Beibei turned her head, Poplar Fruit kissed her on the lips and said with a smile. Fong Beibei broke away from Poplar Fruit's embrace. Holding the flowers in front of her chest, she smiled and asked, "Is it beautiful, or is it beautiful?" In fact, Fong Beibei didn't have, N-word omitted, many clothes today. The only thing Yanghua could see was a long blouse, which was Yanghua's. Underneath, there was what she should have, N-word omitted. Below, there were long slender legs, N-word omitted. Otherwise, why would Yanghua be in such a hurry to return to her room? "You're beautiful." Poplar Fruit sat on the edge of the bed and stretched out his hands. He looked at Fong Beibei with some desire and said, "Come, let Uncle have a look." "Strange uncle." Fong Beibei looked at Poplar Fruit with a reproachful look. Her pink face was a little red. Putting the flowers on the table, she bit her lower lip and walked over. She stretched out her hand and interlocked her fingers with Poplar Fruit's. As their bodies got closer and closer, N-word omitted. Unfortunately, Poplar Fruit was still wearing trousers. "Where did you learn this?" Even though Poplar Fruit was sitting on the bed, he could still look into Fong Beibei's eyes. He squeezed Fong Beibei's little hand and asked with a smile. At first, Fong Beibei didn't even know, N-word omitted. But today, she was so serious. It was the first time she was dressed so, N-word omitted, that Poplar Fruit, N-word omitted, almost flowed out. Fong Beibei blushed and admitted in a low voice, "I looked it up on the internet." Poplar Fruit actually didn't notice that the pressure that Zheng Yujie brought to Fong Beibei wasn't something that could be dispelled with just a few words from him. This pressure even made Fong Beibei unable to eat well and sleep, especially when Poplar Fruit and Zheng Yujie went on a business trip to Canada. Fong Beibei sometimes wasn't as smart as Poplar Fruit when it came to relationships. If it wasn't for Poplar Fruit giving her a stable sense of security, Fong Beibei would probably have sunk herself into love again. It was also because of this pressure that Fong Beibei shyly broke the pace of her relationship with Poplar Fruit. She changed from passive to active, just like the Weibo post she saw on the internet. If you want to hold the heart of a Scorpio man, you have to lock his love in bed. Nonsense. If Poplar Fruit knew, he would definitely give her a slap on the butt, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. However, some knowledge on the internet wasn't lying. Fong Beibei secretly learned from an article on the internet that night. Men like women's dressing the most to change her outfit. Although she was embarrassed, N-word omitted, and also embarrassed to pretend to pick up something, N-word omitted, it still made Poplar Fruit's blood boil. Little vixen. Poplar Fruit gritted his teeth, pulled Fong Beibei into his arms, and kissed her face, N-word omitted, before taking his clothes to the bathroom to take a shower. The room in the Sheraton Hotel had a balcony, but at this time, the wind was still a little cold outside, so Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei could only choose to celebrate their birthday in the room. Fortunately, after Kiki fell asleep, it was difficult to wake her up, so Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei could talk without worry. There was only a small light in the room, so it was dim, but it was quite romantic. Come, make a wish." Poplar Fruit smiled, brought over the cake with an exaggerated 20 candles, and then gently hummed the birthday song in Fong Beibei's ear. Fong Bei pulled Poplar Fruit to sit down on a chair, and she sat on Poplar Fruit's lap. She took Poplar Fruit's hand and hugged it in front of her chest. Her cold little hand covered the outer layer, and she said coquettishly with a smile, "I want you to make a wish with me, okay?" "Okay." Poplar Fruit smiled, hugging Fong Bei's soft body, and the two closed their eyes to make a wish. After Fong Bei blew out the candles, Poplar Fruit patted Fong Bei's little butt, letting her get up first. "I'll cut it for you," Fong Bei said with a smile as she took a plastic knife, smeared some cream on it, and stretched it in front of Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit licked it, and said with a smile, "Then you have to cut a piece for Kiki first. I still have to rely on it to apologize to Kiki tomorrow." Fong Bei rolled her eyes at Poplar Fruit. This guy really knows how to ruin the atmosphere. When Poplar Fruit was cutting the cake, Fong Bei was at the side, secretly eating the fresh strawberries on the cake, and asked, "Uncle, what did you wish for just now?" "Me, I wish that our family can be together forever. Healthy and happy," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. This was his wish all along, and he also had the same wish on his birthday last year. "Me too." Fong Bei looked at Poplar Fruit with sparkling eyes, full of affection. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 952. I want to go out and see the stars. After eating half of the cake, and wiping half of the cake on Poplar Fruit's face, Fong Bei stood obediently and raised her head to let Poplar Fruit wipe her face clean. She shook Poplar Fruit's hand and looked at him expectantly. Poplar Fruit patted Fong Bei's head and asked, "It's so cold outside. You still want to go out?" I want it. Fong Bei shook Poplar Fruit's hand and said softly, "Then you have to wear clothes." Poplar Fruit pressed his two hands and kneaded Fong Bei's flesh, as if he was kneading dough. No, I won't wear it." Fong Bei was acting coquettishly today. She hung onto Poplar Fruit's neck, jumped up, and said with a smile, "I want you to carry me out to see the stars." Poplar Fruit was afraid that she would fall, so he put one hand on Fong Bei's waist, and the other on her little butt. However, it was different from usual. Today Fong Bei, N-words omitted, only had one item, N-words omitted. Poplar Fruit's big hand was propped up from the bottom. N-words omitted, 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 N-words omitted. Poplar Fruit's heart skipped a beat, and he looked at his girlfriend. Fong Bei also looked at him with a red face, but she didn't protest. Looking at her, N-words omitted. Yonghua couldn't help but kiss her, N-words omitted. After kissing for a while, Poplar Fruit was a little restless, but Fong Bei reached out and blocked Poplar Fruit's mouth. She blushed and said, "Wait a little longer. There's still a little longer." Her voice was as soft as a mosquito, but in such a quiet room, Poplar Fruit could still hear her clearly. Scratching his head with a smile, Poplar Fruit turned around and pulled up the blanket on the bed. She was currently N-word omitted, N-word omitted, N-word omitted, N-word omitted, N-word omitted, N-word omitted neck. There's still a present. Fong Bei wrapped the quilt around herself and waited for Poplar Fruit to take the gift that was still in the process of being wrapped. The two of them then went out to the balcony and sat on the bench while hugging each other. "Are you cold?" Poplar Fruit asked with concern. He covered most of the quilt, N-word omitted, on her body, and he also covered some places that might be N-word omitted. "No, I'm not cold. You're here." Fong Bei also snorted sweetly with a nasal voice. "Actually, there's nothing to see in the stars outside." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Next time, I'll take you to my house to see it. It's far away from the big city, and it's a natural starry sky. Today is today, and the future is the future. Today is very important. I want to leave more romantic memories." Fong Bei sat in Poplar Fruit's arms and fondled Poplar Fruit's handsome face. Through his deep eyes, she looked at the starry sky in his eyes. Sitting back to back on the carpet, listening to music and talking about wishes. Fong Bei softly hummed, "The most romantic thing." Poplar Fruit still wanted to sing with her, but Fong Bebe reached out her hand and blocked his mouth. This guy's singing is out of tune. It's fine as long as it's nice to listen to. Fong Bebe's singing was very good. Her voice was light and filled with deep emotions. Poplar Fruit couldn't help but gradually become infatuated. The most romantic thing I can think of is to slowly grow old with you. Along the way, I'll collect bits and pieces of laughter, and we'll talk about it slowly in the rocking chair in the future. Just like this, we'll hold hands and slowly walk through the long river of life together. When you and I both have white hair, just like today, we'll sit on the same rocking chair and look at the bits and pieces of romance that we've experienced together, and let happiness swirl in our hearts like a small whirlpool. The most romantic thing I can think of is to slowly grow old with you. Until we're too old to go anywhere, you'll still treat me like a treasure in the palm of your hand. Fong Bebe leaned on Poplar Fruit's shoulder and sang affectionately. Poplar Fruit was also fascinated by it. Suddenly, he felt a drop of water suddenly fall on his neck and break into several pieces. Poplar Fruit's eyes instantly became clear. He gently held Fong Bebe's head, only to find that his beloved little girl's face was mottled with tears. It was already cold from the cold wind of the upper level. "Baby, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" Poplar Fruit asked. He lovingly wiped away the tears on Fong Bebe's face with his thumb, and held her small face in his warm palm. "Uncle." Fong Bebe held Poplar Fruit's hand in a daze. She gently rubbed her face against it and whispered, "I'm so scared. I'm scared that one day, you won't want me anymore. What will I do then?" "Silly girl, we'll always be together." Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Bebe affectionately, rubbed her head and said. He knew that Fong Bebe's heart was the source of her uneasiness. He could only comfort her again and again, tirelessly. Fong Bebe leaned her head on Poplar Fruit's chest. Like a child, she stretched out her pinky, pouted her small mouth, and said, "You have to pinky swear with me. You can't go back on your words." Poplar Fruit pinky swear with her and swore very seriously. Poplar Fruit pinky swear with Baby today. In this life, I'll never change my mind to Baby. I'll always spoil her, and I'll never be fierce to her. I'm your baby. Fong Bebe's heart was sweet. She gently drew on Poplar Fruit's chest, as if she was writing the word baby into Poplar Fruit's heart. Of course. Poplar Fruit laughed and pinched Fong Bebe's nose. In this way, Poplar Fruit enjoyed the luxurious lights and starlight in Macau. Fong Bebe, who first proposed to see the stars, didn't even want to move her eyes. She smiled sweetly and leaned on Poplar Fruit's arms, enjoying the warmth of this moment. She couldn't feel the cold. Even her exposed face was protected by Poplar Fruit's hot chest and gentle palm. Her body was warm, and so was her heart. Actually, the gift can be opened in advance. Fong Bebe couldn't bear it anymore. She reached out and gently pulled the ribbon on the square box. She didn't dare to use force, so she just fiddled with it. "You have to go in to open it," Poplar Fruit said as he pinched her slightly cold little nose. "Well, let's go back." Fong Bebe nodded and said expectantly. Back in the room, sitting cross-legged on the bed, Fong Bebe saw Poplar Fruit's gaze involuntarily. She shyly pulled, "N-word omitted here," and covered, "N-word omitted here." "I'll open it." Fong Bebe licked her lips and asked eagerly. "Open it." Poplar Fruit smiled and sat beside her and watched. The packaging ribbon and colorful paper box were slowly peeled off, and the crystal-like transparent glass box inside gradually revealed its true appearance. Fong Bebe couldn't help but cover her mouth and look at the transparent box in surprise. There were blue and purple flowers blooming. Although it was made of cloth, it was exquisite as if it was real. It was very beautiful. "This is called Forget-Me-Not," Poplar Fruit's soft voice gently reminded. "Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to ***. Chapter 953. What's this? Fong Bebe looked at the flowers obsessively, but she suddenly saw that there seemed to be something else inside. She raised her head and asked Poplar Fruit in surprise as she pointed at a shiny object that even the flowers couldn't hide. Poplar Fruit taught Fong Bebe how to open the small mechanism. He opened the lid of the glass box and smiled. "Take it out and let's see. There are 2 pieces." Fong Beibei looked in with longing. She reached out and gently pushed away the forget-me-nots, and then carefully held up the crystal maple leaf. Although it was artificial crystal, it was also crystal clear, and just like a red maple leaf when it was in full bloom, this crystal maple leaf also showed a beautiful flame color. Fong Beibei took out the second crystal maple leaf that was exactly the same. She held both of them in her arms and looked at them over and over again. She loved them so much that she didn't want to let them go. These two pieces are exactly the same size. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "The only difference is their inner content." Inner content? Fong Beibei asked in confusion. Poplar Fruit smiled and dug in the box just now. He took out a small wooden box with a magnifying glass. He opened the box and took out the magnifying glass, and put the box on the bed. "Give me a piece," Poplar Fruit said softly. "Don't worry, they're not that fragile. They're very hard." Under Fong Beibei's curious gaze, Poplar Fruit put the crystal maple leaf in the middle of the opened wooden box, and then pressed a switch on the side. It turned out that there was a small light bulb in the middle of the wooden box, which lit up the crystal maple leaf like a flame. Of course, because of the refraction and scattering, the light of the small light bulb was very soft. Poplar Fruit pointed the magnifying glass at the crystal maple leaf, focused it, and signaled Fong Beibei to look over. "Wow. Uncle, there are words." Fong Beibei covered her mouth with one hand and looked at Poplar Fruit in disbelief. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "That's right. These two maple leaves are engraved with two letters that I wrote to you." The contents of the letters were only known to Poplar Fruit. One letter was about the past, which was the leaf that Fong Beibei was looking at now. Poplar Fruit used an impromptu poem to recall the moment when they met. It was love at first sight, but she was too slow. Fortunately, she didn't miss it. The second letter was about the future. Whether it was Poplar Fruit's promise or his vision, Poplar Fruit wrote the most beautiful future he could imagine on the crystal maple leaf that symbolized eternity, and gave it to Fong Beibei, promising her eternal love for a lifetime. "Papa." Before she looked at it seriously, Fong Beibei's tears fell again, as if they were worthless. But this time, they were tears of gratitude. "Silly." Poplar Fruit lovingly wiped away her tears and smiled. "You haven't looked at it yet. Why are you crying?" Fong Beibei gently pushed Poplar Fruit's arm, and her beautiful eyes were filled with affection. She pleaded, "Uncle, can you take a shower? I want to finish reading it myself." Although there weren't many words engraved on each leaf, Fong Beibei still wanted to read it slowly and quietly. Only in her own environment could she immerse herself in it, and feel the love that Poplar Fruit engraved on it. She didn't want to miss a single drop. Poplar Fruit nodded. As he got up, he reminded her, "Then you have to promise me. Even if you're touched, you can't cry. You have to smile. Our love is to be happy. If you cry, you won't look good." Fong Beibei nodded vigorously. Poplar Fruit took his clothes and walked into the bathroom. Watching his back disappear after the bathroom door closed, Fong Beibei picked up the magnifying glass and carefully moved the small box with the maple leaf in front of her. Her movements were gentle, as if she was worried that it would break if she used too much force. At first, Fong Beibei was still trying to find the right angle and distance. The small engraved words flickered under the magnifying glass. She had to aim at the right place, hold her breath, and not shake her hands to see it clearly. The sprite that jumps in the heart. It should be the title. Fong Beibei looked at the next line, which read, "Weird Uncle dedicates it to his favorite baby." Fong Beibei couldn't help but laugh. Her hands were shaking as she whispered softly, "He still remembers that he's a weird uncle." In her mind, she remembered the first time she looked back. Poplar Fruit was holding the infant Kiki and secretly watching her dazed look. "The drizzle is like silk, the drizzle is thick and the leaves are green." Fong Beibei read the first line softly. Her eyes began to blur. It seemed that she was being led step by Poplar Fruit into the world he created. In fact, although this poem was called a poem, it didn't seem like one. It was less neat than ancient poems, and it couldn't be categorized as a modern poem. It could be considered a poem, but it was an impromptu love poem that came from the bottom of his heart. The hanging willow branches turned into pearls and fell into the grass to gather into a trickle. It was as quiet as a splash of ink painting painted with coldness. The background was harmonious and lacked a touch of romance. The second line described a scene. Was it the scene by the lake? It looked like it, but it didn't look like it. Inadvertently, a young lady broke into the grass and disturbed the tranquility. Like a naughty elf, she jumped on the tip of the grass and danced with her delicate feet, stirring up clear waves and shattering the sparkling and translucent leaves into the interconnected water surface. She understood. The first picture was about Poplar Fruit's state of mind. Because of his ex-girlfriend's departure, he was sad, tearful, gloomy and lost. But Fong Beibei's sudden intrusion brought life to his state of mind, brought happiness and hope. Fong Beibei might not know, and Poplar Fruit might not notice, but at that time, his heart was already opened. Like a stupid painter, this world was dazzled by the happy figure and her unrestrained big eyes. He simply wiped away the clouds and rain with a stroke of his brush, and let in the sunshine. He looked at the beautiful figure by the lake and her smiling big eyes. His state of mind was suddenly enlightened. Fong Beibei's kindness and gentleness were like sunshine, imprinted in Poplar Fruit's heart, making him feel warm. The lazy sun is like satin, soft and warm, spreading ripples in the stream. At the end of the song, Poplar Fruit used the same sentence pattern to express his feelings. Because of Fong Beibei's appearance in his life, he felt like he was bathing in the warm sunshine every day. There was no longer the continuous drizzle of love, only the hope of improving himself every day. Fong Beibei was not moved to tears like before. She gently stroked the maple leaf that Poplar Fruit carved with his heart and love, and the corners of her mouth gently curved up. Just like Poplar Fruit's state of mind, at this moment, she also felt soaked in love, warm and happy. Note: this poem, The Fairy Jumping in the Heart, is an original, but it was not written by Xiaohan for the occasion. It was written by Xiaohan for his first love when he was still a little bit of a hipster. Of course, the first love has become a thing of the past, and Xiaohan is not willing to go back too much. He borrowed Poplar Fruit's hand to give this poem to Fong Beibei. He just feels that this poem is a little bit suitable for this situation. It is also a kind of wish. He wishes that the love between Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei will be as pure and warm as when they first met. Don't think too much. Fong Beibei and Xiaohan's first love are not related in terms of personality. After all, a novel is a novel. Chapter 954. Humph, Papa, you're lying. Kiki will never believe you again. Papa knows he's wrong. Look, didn't Papa buy you a cake to make amends? Kiki, don't you like to eat cake the most? In the room, the conversation between Kiki and Poplar Fruit could be heard from afar, and the bright sunlight also shone in the room, making the room warm. Fong Beibei's long eyelashes trembled, and she squinted her eyes and woke up. But, the little girl seemed to swallow her saliva, and said hesitantly, Papa is wrong. Then the cake is here. Kiki, do you want to forgive Papa? Poplar Fruit wanted to carry on with his rascal father to the end. In the end, the temptation of the cake was still strong. Kiki licked her small mouth, stared at the cake, and said with a weak position, Okay, Kiki forgives Papa. Puffed. The laughter from the bed made Poplar Fruit and Kiki couldn't help but turn their heads, only to see Fong Beibei propping up half of her body, one hand lifting up her messy hair, and looking at them. Sister Beibei, you're sleeping in. Kiki didn't care about the cake. She jumped down from the chair, jumped on the bed, and chirped. The sun is shining on your butt. Poplar Fruit certainly knew why Fong Beibei woke up so late. Yesterday, they were tossed until the latter half of the night. In the end, Poplar Fruit even carried her to take a hot bath and change the new sheets. Except for Poplar Fruit, who else could be alive and kicking so early in the morning? Besides, Fong Beibei had just experienced the pain of breaking a melon, so her mental and physical consumption was huge. Naturally, she needed to sleep to recover. It seemed that after one night, Fong Beibei had changed a lot. It seemed that her skin was more rosy, and when her hair was combed, there was a bit of mature charm that couldn't be felt before. These changes were all because of Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit walked over and sat beside Fong Beibei. He touched Fong Beibei's face lovingly, and then kissed her forehead. Uncle, good morning. Fong Beibei didn't care about Kiki's watching, stretched out her arms and hung around Poplar Fruit's neck, and said sweetly, "Good morning." Poplar Fruit smiled brightly looking at her and said, "Are you still sleepy?" "Are you sleepy?" Fong Beibei shook her head and smiled. Fong Beibei's Poplar Fruit and Kiki. Espoyas, however, just as Fong Beibei moved her legs, she screamed and didn't dare to move anymore. Although Poplar Fruit treated Fong Beibei gently yesterday, after all, it was Fong Beibei's first time, and Poplar Fruit was stronger than the average person. So now Fong Beibei felt a burning pain between her legs when she moved slightly. "Uncle, it hurts." Fong Beibei pouted and looked at Poplar Fruit pitifully. Poplar Fruit scratched his head, a little embarrassed. He lowered his head, put his hand under Fong Beibei's legs, and gently picked her up. "Don't move today, leave everything to me." Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Beibei gently and said, he didn't have any specific task today, only a lecture. Originally, he wanted to listen to it because he was interested, but today his girlfriend was more important, so he might as well skip the whole day. Fong Beibei smiled sweetly and leaned her head on Poplar Fruit's chest. Sister Beibei is lazy. She doesn't walk by herself, she wants Papa to carry her. Chi-Chi was still a little jealous. When she saw how well her father treated Sister Beibei, she felt an indescribable sense of nervousness in her heart. It was as if she was afraid that her father would be snatched away from her. "Your sister Beibei fell yesterday, her body is injured, so it's inconvenient for her to move, so she wants Papa to carry her." Poplar Fruit smiled and coaxed the little girl. Jealousy came and went quickly. After hearing her father's explanation, Chi-Chi's vigilance turned into concern. She was still very kind at heart, so she ran over and circled around her father. She asked with concern, "Did Big Sister Beibei fall?" Kiki also had the experience of falling. Although her skin was scraped, it quickly recovered under her father's care, but the pain at the time of injury was not good. "Where does it hurt?" "Let Papa blow. Papa will blow it and it will be fine," Kiki said, thinking that she was very smart. But Fong Beibei thought of another direction. Her face turned red, and she buried herself in Poplar Fruit's arms like an ostrich. Chi-Chi was puzzled. She didn't know why elder sister Beibei would have such a reaction. The little fellow paced around in front of the bathroom and watched as his father helped elder sister Beibei wash up, as if he was taking care of her. However, he couldn't help but sneak a glance at the cake on the table. His father had taken it out of the fridge, and it was still cold. "It must be delicious." "Uncle, don't you have to go to the meeting?" Fong Beibei asked Poplar Fruit while washing her face. She had difficulty moving, but it was not that she could not take care of herself. Of course, she washed her face and brushed her teeth by herself. "I skipped. I haven't skipped class for a long time." Poplar Fruit whispered to Fong Beibei. This was not a good thing. Kiki could not hear it and learn it in the future. Back at the table, Poplar Fruit had already ordered breakfast from the hotel waiter, and it was sent to the room. There was hot bone porridge, which was for Fong Beibei to supplement collagen, and there was a special Portuguese tarts, which looked very appetizing. There were also various pastries. Poplar Fruit considerately found a soft sofa cushion and put it on the chair, so that Fong Beibei could not directly touch the cold chair. Kiki sat in her seat and looked at the cake in front of her reluctantly. Then, she looked at Fong Beibei and said with a little heartache, "Sister Beibei, Kiki's cake is for you to eat. Eat half of it." Fong Beibei was so surprised that her mouth formed an O shape. She knew how much Kiki liked cream cake. She ate it without caring if her stomach could take it. But she actually gave the cake to her, half of it. Poplar Fruit only cut a small piece for Kiki, and Kiki herself could not eat enough. Poplar Fruit was also very surprised. He knew Kiki better, so he smiled and said, "Baby, Kiki is so good to you. She is not willing to share her food with just anyone. She doesn't even give it to Daddy. Sister Beibei is injured. Kiki has to take care of Sister Beibei." Kiki pouted. She felt that what her father said was wrong, even though she could not figure out what was wrong. Fong Beibei was so moved that her eyes became watery. She reached out and hugged Kiki, kissing her. She even rubbed her face against Kiki and said emotionally, "Good Kiki, Sister Beibei is very happy." But Sister Bebe can't eat cake today because the cream is too greasy. Sister Bebe needs to eat porridge to recover quickly. Fong Bebe smiled and said to Kiki, "So this small piece of cake, Kiki should eat it herself." Kiki immediately became happy. It seemed that this little foodie was still a little foodie, looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 955. It was said that people would be in high spirits when faced with happy events. Poplar Fruit was the same. He had grown from a young boy to a man in a sober state. After returning to Yangcheng, Poplar Fruit was like a cheater, encountering several good things in a row. First, the selection of national top 10 university students finally came to fruition, and Poplar Fruit became the only winner among the university students in Guangdong province. Some of the school's official media outlets began to promote this matter, and even some media outlets joined in the fun. Poplar Fruit didn't care much. He even refused to accept interviews from the media as usual, and let this matter slowly fade away. Of course, this matter still had an impact on Poplar Fruit. After a week of publicity, the award would be awarded. Poplar Fruit, under the arrangement of the school, would also launch a tour of more than a dozen universities in Guangdong province for more than a month. The second good thing was Poplar Fruit's research on health Taiji fist. While maintaining the most basic beauty, he removed some cumbersome movements that were difficult to learn and added 2 movements that were beneficial to the heart and lungs after training, integrating them into a new type of health Taiji fist. Poplar Fruit didn't dare to use his own name casually, because of the suspicion of picking up other people's wisdom. He only taught it to Fong Bebe and Chen Anlin in a low-key manner. From her, it was spread to the grandpas and grandmas in the square who liked to get up early to exercise. As for how effective it would be, he couldn't tell at the moment, but Poplar Fruit was very confident. This was because when he personally experienced it, he could feel the nourishing effects of this Taiji fist. Although it couldn't be as fierce and aggressive as Taekwondo, it was easy to learn, and its health effects would gradually spread. Poplar Fruit didn't intend to ask for any intellectual property rights for this health Taiji fist. He only recorded it as an interest class and put it in his own remote education system. As for Chen Anlin, Poplar Fruit purely helped him out of friendship and didn't ask for anything in return. Originally, Chen Zongdai had some complaints about Poplar Fruit skipping work on the last day of the seminar. However, Poplar Fruit excitedly came to him over the weekend and provided him with a preliminary research report of nearly 30,000 words. Chen Zongdai also forgot about his dissatisfaction. In Chen Zongdai's eyes, Poplar Fruit's 30,000 words were hundreds of times more precious than any translation theory. Why did he say that? No matter how good the theory was, it was still a theory and research, and it was more practical than ideal. In addition, it was used for top translators, and it didn't reflect its value to ordinary translators. Poplar Fruit's latest preliminary research report came from a flash of genius. If it could really be realized, it might overturn the entire pattern of teaching Chinese to the outside world. It might even bring new help to the spread of Chinese. That's right, this was the new method of learning Chinese that Poplar Fruit suddenly wanted to study. He believed that Chinese was judged to be the most difficult language to learn for a reason. However, with the glorious history of Chinese for thousands of years, Poplar Fruit firmly believed that Chinese wouldn't become more difficult to learn. The difficulty was caused by cultural and linguistic differences. Therefore, Poplar Fruit wanted to find a new breakthrough to change the situation of the difficulty of learning Chinese. Of course, Poplar Fruit only treated this as a research project. He didn't think that he could quickly make a change that so many sages couldn't do for thousands of years. However, after returning from Macau, Yang Guo felt refreshed, and his mind was better than ever. With a flash of inspiration, he seemed to have found a path that led to the Sunshine Avenue. Word disassembly method. The following content is purely Xiaohan's imagination. Just let the officials laugh it off. Don't think too much about it. Just like English words can be disassembled into several English letters, Chinese characters can also be disassembled into different radicals. However, because the pronunciation of Chinese characters didn't have much to do with the radicals, it was difficult to conclude an effective rule. On the other hand, Yang Gua suddenly thought of something that might be useful. It was to look for the meaning and pronunciation of Chinese characters that were separated from the sub-elements of the radicals and other Chinese characters. Through word disassembly, Poplar Fruit had summarized the pronunciation rules of nearly 100 common prepositions, and formed the 30,000-word research report in Chen Zongdai's hands. However, Poplar Fruit's report still had limitations. First of all, Poplar Fruit's research basis wasn't the simplified Chinese characters commonly used in mainland China, but rather, it was a bit of a return to the traditional Chinese character model. Although he could dig out a lot of rules, it still had a negative impact on the long-term development of Chinese literature. Such complicated and obscure traditional Chinese characters will increase the difficulty of learning. Chen Zongdai pointed out and said, "Don't think that the implementation of simplified Chinese characters is for political reasons. The simplified Chinese characters themselves are to make Chinese characters easier to recognize and write, and reduce the cost of learning." This was not difficult to understand. In Europe and America, people called the traditional Chinese characters traditional Chinese, while the simplified Chinese characters were called simplified Chinese, simplified Chinese. It could also be seen that the simplified Chinese characters were easier to learn. However, this was also a challenge for Poplar Fruit. Don't think that simplified Chinese characters are the simplification of traditional Chinese characters. You can definitely see the shadow of traditional Chinese characters in simplified Chinese characters. This was a wrong understanding. This was because the process of simplifying traditional Chinese characters included two aspects. The first was the familiar reduction of strokes, which was the so-called simplification. The second was to reduce the number of words, and abolish the different forms of characters with different sounds and meanings. But in between, there must be a trace to be found. But this was also a big project that definitely wasn't a small amount of work. Would Poplar Fruit be scared? How could it be? Even if Chen Zongdai repeatedly warned Poplar Fruit to keep it a secret, and not let others steal the research results, Poplar Fruit didn't feel the slightest bit of pressure when he was asked to do the research alone. On the contrary, Poplar Fruit felt his fighting spirit soaring. It had been a long time since he had encountered such a difficult challenge. Then let me conquer this big research project. Chen Zongdai looked at Poplar Fruit. He was a little gratified and smiled with some expectation. After you finish this research, even if you haven't graduated from your Ph.D., you will have enough qualifications to be promoted to a professor. Although Poplar Fruit was asked to do this research alone, Chen Zongdai's support for Poplar Fruit didn't decrease. He helped Poplar Fruit invite a retired old professor from the Chinese department. He was once a leading figure in the Chinese research field in China. He let Poplar Fruit follow him for a while. Although Poplar Fruit was proficient in more than a dozen foreign languages, he hadn't completely understood the essence of Chinese yet. Next, in this semester, in addition to his own courses, Poplar Fruit would also learn all the knowledge in the field of Chinese research from this old professor. Is this a kind of reforging in the academic field? Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 956. After returning to Yangcheng, Poplar Fruit realized that his life had become much more interesting. During the day, he would either give lectures to the students of Higashiyama University, or the children of Xiong Village in Litong County. He would also mix around with a group of professors, graduate students, and people from Beijing International Studies University, such as Professor Rowling, to research and perfect the almost mature translation theory. At night, Poplar Fruit would go home and have dinner with Fang Beibei and Kiki. Then the family would go for a walk, or go to a music party organized by the students in school. At night, Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei, who were addicted to the taste, naturally couldn't help but be entangled with each other. Except for the first 2 nights when Fang Beibei was resting, there was a serenade playing in the bedroom almost every night. Poplar Fruit's body was too strong. He didn't even know how to feel tired. Fang Beibei couldn't help but beg for mercy every time. Fortunately, a young body's recovery ability was strong. He could continue to fight the next day. Under Yang was nourishment. Although Fang Beibei didn't really turn from a young girl to a young woman immediately, her face was rosy, Her skin was translucent and lustrous, and her complexion was also in high spirits. Compared to before, it was as if there were ripples in a clear spring. She was so beautiful that she looked like a beauty with heavy makeup in a Korean drama. Wasn't this the happy life of having a wife and a daughter, what Poplar Fruit was looking forward to? Unfortunately, the good days didn't last long. Poplar Fruit once again asked for leave from the students, and moved his class from Friday to next Monday. He had to go to Litong County because the workers brought by Fat Dragon and Kai Simin went on strike. When they were recruiting, Poplar Fruit also went to take a look. He also told Fat Dragon and Kai Simin to emphasize the hardships of outdoor and mountainous work. However, it seemed that they still didn't take it seriously. Now that they were on the mountain, they were complaining. After working for a few days, more than 10 people came together and said that they were quitting. They wanted to get their pay and leave. Thinking about it, it made sense. Most of the people who knew a little about computers and circuit diagrams were college students or technical geeks who had been raised in the city all year round. How could they bear the difficult conditions on the mountain and be troubled by mosquitoes? When they heard that they were going to Gyeongsang province for field work, they all thought that they were going to go sightseeing. In the end, there were mountains and rivers, but they were barren. It wasn't a romantic hotel like he had imagined. He stayed in a villager's house and slept on straw mats and heatable brick beds. She was not as affectionate as he had imagined. The child from a poor family was sallow and emaciated. She was not good-looking at all. There were no exotic delicacies as she had imagined. There was only porridge that had been boiled to a pulp and salted vegetables that did not have the smell of meat. Poplar Fruit knew that the standard of living was very poor. When he had first come to Seong village, it was more or less the same. It was he who had paid for Seongji's family to improve their meals. Fat Dragon and the others had the support of the government this time. According to Fat Dragon, before they went up the mountain, the county treated them to a good meal. After they went up the mountain, the town sent them some meat and poultry every few days. The villagers also gave them a lot of eggs that they were reluctant to eat. But the human heart was hard to satisfy. Not everyone could be moved by the actions of the villagers like Poplar Fruit and the others. The 10 people who collectively went on strike not only didn't want to stay on the mountain for a moment longer, but also made a fuss about asking Fat Dragon to give them their pay. They hadn't worked for half a month yet, and they already wanted 2 months' pay. 1 month was compensation. The quarrel was endless. Therefore, the project on the mountain was interrupted. Fat Dragon and Kai Simin were not very opinionated people. Only Poplar Fruit could do it. After receiving the news, Poplar Fruit immediately took the earliest flight to Gyeongsang province the next day and rushed to Lidong County. He didn't bring Kiki along this time. Feng Beibei would take care of her at home. It was better than traveling with him. When they arrived at the mountain village where the striking people gathered, it was almost evening. Poplar Fruit pulled Fat Dragon and Kai Simin to discuss. How is the situation now? Has it eased up a little? Fat Dragon shook his head and said dishearteningly, No, it's been going on since yesterday. They even said that we should pay them 3 months' pay, because we tricked them to come here. Kai Simin also nodded silently. The two of them had been a little exhausted facing this group of people for the past few days. They thought that they could work hard for a month and benefit thousands of poor children in the mountainous areas, which could be considered as accumulating good karma. But they didn't expect that there were still too many people who didn't look the same. Once they couldn't get the glory and wealth they wanted, they suddenly changed their faces. Especially the one who led the strike, who was personally promoted by Kai Simin to be the team leader. Brothers, it's none of your business. Poplar Fruit patted their shoulders and comforted them. Don't worry, leave the rest to me. You guys go and turn on the camera. I'll talk to them. Secretly help me record the whole process, on and off the stage. Poplar Fruit was a little cautious in the face of these rascals. Not only that, he also brought a few young and strong men from Seong village with him this time. Then, he called out to the young and strong men in the local mountain village and easily invited these people to the ancestral hall in the village where Poplar Fruit was. Little boss. Everyone knew Poplar Fruit. When they first set off, Poplar Fruit even invited everyone to have a meal together to send them off. Besides, Poplar Fruit's reputation was out there. They had long heard of him, and often talked about him in private. However, it was different from when they first ate together. Poplar Fruit now had a straight face. His serious expression set off the fierce-looking throne behind him, and even the entire ancestral hall had a somber feeling. "You guys want to quit?" Poplar Fruit coldly glanced at them, snorted, and said, "Sure, if you don't want to do it, stand out." His voice was not loud, but it was somewhat frightening. Many timid people hesitated, and did not dare to come forward. However, there were still a few brave people in the lead. They strode forward and pulled others, shouting, "If you don't want to do it, stand out. What are you afraid of? What can he do to us?" Under the lead of these few people, more than a dozen people slowly stood out. The rest of the people who were still watching, or who had never thought of doing it, sat at the back with their mouths open and stared blankly. Very good. Poplar Fruit was not angry but laughed. He smiled faintly and gently clapped his hands. Then he slowly asked, "I heard that you guys don't want to do it anymore because the conditions on the mountain are too bad? So what?" The leader straightened his neck and said, "Who told you to trick us into coming to this godforsaken place? Only a ghost would want to stay here." "Godforsaken place?" Poplar Fruit chuckled. He saw the angry look on the faces of the few mountain village youths behind him. He spread out his hands and said, "This is a place where people live. How can birds poop here? If you want to find a place where birds poop, sure, I'll take you to the back of the mountain for a walk. I guarantee that there will be bird poop everywhere." Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 957. Poplar Fruit rarely had a black face, but he was really angry today. Even though he had rushed here for a day, Poplar Fruit did not have time to rest, and stood in front of this group of people who were on strike. However, he was criticized by the other party. "What right do you have to talk about me? Aren't you shirking your responsibility? We're staying on this ghost mountain in the middle of nowhere. Where are you? Don't think that we don't watch the news." The meaning was very straightforward. They were saying that Poplar Fruit was having a good time in Macau, but they were deceived to come here to suffer, so they felt unbalanced. It seemed that it was not a good thing to let Fat Dragon spread the internet on the mountain too early. However, Poplar Fruit was magnanimous about this matter. He looked at them indifferently and said, "I didn't accompany you this time because I had something to do. Even if I went to Macau, it was to attend an academic conference. This explanation is not for you to hear. It's for the friends who are still willing to help with the remote education of our mountain children, and work hard together." Poplar Fruit looked at the few dozen people with a trace of warmth in his eyes. "But you." Poplar Fruit pointed at the group of people who were on strike and said with a sneer, "You said that I'm not qualified to talk about you." "So what?" The leader said with a stiff neck. He was going to bite the bullet and go against Poplar Fruit today. These guys stayed in front of the computer all day, so their stomachs were thicker than their waists. Looking at the unfriendly meow people around them, their hearts were beating fast. If the leader didn't back down, they would have fallen down in fear. Poplar Fruit spread his hands and pointed to the young people of Xiong village next to him and said, "I'm not qualified. What you say doesn't count. You can ask them. Last summer, I, Mr. Long, and Mr. Kai each stayed in Xiong village for more than a month. What we did was the same as what you're doing now. We're not as simple as you. Everything needs to be explored step by step. The environment in Xiong village is worse than the mountain village that everyone is standing in now. It takes 2 hours to go up the mountain. It's good enough that we have food. We have never expected anyone to send us chickens, ducks, or pork to improve our meals." Poplar Fruit looked into their eyes, chuckled, and said, "Are you saying that I don't have the right to criticize you? At the beginning of this year, I came to Lidong County and followed Director Meng of the Lidong County Education Bureau. In order to investigate more than 4,000 students in the poor mountainous areas of Lidong County, we spent 3 days walking through 16 poor mountain villages in Lidong County. You said that you're working hard right now, but do you know that during this period, including Director Meng, we've been drinking bottled spring water and eating the steamed buns that we brought with us? Due to the lack of time, we didn't even have the time to sit down for a meal or have a good sleep." So you're saying that I don't have the right to criticize you? Poplar Fruit stared straight into their eyes, causing their eyes to flicker. What are we doing? Are we unscrupulous businessmen who go around extorting money? Poplar Fruit said loudly. No. We're doing charity work. We've worked hard for a month or two, and we've contributed our knowledge and strength to these children. Poplar Fruit pointed outside the ancestral hall and said, We're giving these children who can't go to school a chance to study at the same level as the children in the city. Think about the significance of this matter. What does our little bit of hard work count for? Poplar Fruit raised his head and said proudly, We're just ordinary people, but we can also bring light to others. Poplar Fruit's words made the people behind him who didn't want to wallow in the mire with this group of people puff out their chests. The group of people who were on strike gradually showed signs of collapsing. It was still the leader who braced himself and shouted, I don't care what you say. Anyway, I can't stay in this damn place any longer. I can't find a job anywhere, so why should I suffer with you? Let me ask you a question. Poplar Fruit ignored him and looked at the others. His voice became gentler as he said, When you came for the interview, did Mr. Long and Mr. Kai tell you about the special nature of this job? A few people hesitated and nodded, but the leader turned around and glared at them fiercely. He said, Don't listen to him. They didn't say anything. Poplar Fruit laughed and pointed at the people sitting behind him. He asked, When we signed the contract, did Mr. Long and Mr. Kai emphasize that our job requires us to assemble computers in remote mountainous areas? Yes. They answered in unison. Did the contract clearly state the nature of the job? Poplar Fruit continued to ask. Yes. Then before you left, when I saw you off, did I tell you about the situation in Litong County? Poplar Fruit asked. He clearly remembered that during the meal, Poplar Fruit smiled and said to them, When you are on the mountain, if there is anything you are not used to, you should tell me. The company will do its best to help you solve it. The conditions in the mountain are tough, so everyone should try their best to overcome it. Yes. 3 questions in a row, 3 affirmative answers, gradually began to make the few people who were on strike panic. They shouted, What nonsense are you talking about? Don't be fooled by him. Do you want to stay in this damn place forever? Let me tell you, he tricked you into coming here. Maybe you will be tricked into staying here forever in the future. Then you will regret it. Rumors are misleading. Poplar Fruit slammed the table. In his anger, he couldn't hold it in, and the table collapsed with a crash. In silence, the people in the ancestral hall stared at the pile of broken wood. On the one hand, they couldn't believe it, and on the other hand, they were a little scared. Poplar Fruit had never thought of tearing down the table in the ancestral hall, but he didn't expect it to be so fragile. Since the table had collapsed, Poplar Fruit had no choice but to cough twice to get everyone's attention. If you don't want to stay here, we won't force you to stay. Poplar Fruit laughed and said, Everyone has their own ambitions. We are doing charity, not bandits. Tomorrow, we will send someone to send you home. But Poplar Fruit stopped the leader of the group of people who were on strike from interrupting. He waved his hand and said, You want us to compensate you? That's impossible. We can give you this month's salary, and we will also provide you with tickets to return home. Since there is no fate, let's part on good terms. If you don't compensate us, why should we part on good terms? The leader shouted angrily. If you don't compensate us, then you're blackmailing us. We'll sue you. Poplar Fruit didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and said, Okay, if you want to go ahead and sue us. You can try and see if you sue us or we sue you. Don't forget, the contract is written clearly in black and white. Now, we don't want you to lose your work, and we will give you this month's salary, but we will reserve the right to pursue the matter. When the time comes, we can go to court and let the judge judge to see if you are right or we are right. Poplar Fruit pointed to the cameras around the venue and said, Every word I say is recorded here. Don't try to slander me and force you to do anything. These are all evidence. The strike plan was disrupted by Poplar Fruit, and the so-called threat of going to court was also defeated by the loopholes pointed out by Poplar Fruit. Panic pervaded the whole group of people on strike. Even the leaders were helpless. Looking at the questioning eyes of their teammates, They wanted to cry but had no tears. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 958. The next day, the people who went on strike left Lidong County dejectedly. Poplar Fruit didn't know if they would bring trouble to them in the future, but they still kept the evidence, just in case. This incident reminded Yang Guo that public welfare wasn't something that could be done by just relying on their hot-bloodedness. As the amount of money involved increased, so did the number of people involved. It required a professional system and professional people to operate it. Only then would there not be trouble over and over again. After Poplar Fruit went back, he would take measures to solve these problems one by one. But before that, he had to face the problem of not having enough manpower. We were already short of manpower before. Now that more than half of them have left, it's even more troublesome. Fat Dragon said to Poplar Fruit worriedly. There were more than 4,000 students. They had to assemble so many pieces of equipment and instruct the village's school administrators to teach them how to use the equipment, let alone a month or two. Even with the current 10 people, they might not be able to complete it by the end of the semester. Time wasn't a problem for Fat Dragon and the others for the time being, but for so many children waiting for them, every minute and every second was extra precious. Poplar Fruit turned to look at Meng Ping. Meng Ping had just come up the mountain not long ago. He asked, Uncle Meng, do you think it's possible for us to ask the villagers in the mountain for help? Didn't you say that your work was very delicate? They don't know anything, so how can they help? Meng Ping asked doubtfully. Even he was dazzled by the parameters on the machines, let alone the villagers who might not even be at the primary school level. He couldn't understand them. Fat Dragon also looked at Poplar Fruit doubtfully. He nodded and said, Yes, it might be very difficult. Poplar Fruit sighed and said, I've thought about it, but we have to realize that it's very difficult for us to find suitable replacements. Even if we hurry to recruit people, they might not be able to endure as much as the people who just left. Meng Ping nodded. As a native of Lidong County, he was quite upset when he heard that the workers had to leave because of the harsh environment. He couldn't sleep for the past 2 nights. He was just a small bureau chief and did not have the ability to change the poverty situation in Lidong County. Poplar Fruit continued. In addition, just like the situation in Xiong Village, we need to train the school administrators in the village in the future. We need to teach them the basic maintenance and use of the system, so that they can manage it in the future. If that's the case, we can ask them to come over and help in advance. We'll train them first before they join us in the construction of the equipment. Poplar Fruit explained, if they can help us, they can also manage the equipment well in the future. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Fat Dragon scratched his head and said, It's still hard to teach, right? The training time is very long. My suggestion is to take it 1 step at a time. First, let them follow your team and learn how to connect the wires, Poplar Fruit said. The complicated work can be delayed and taught slowly. I don't believe that I can't learn it after learning from you. Fat Dragon thought for a moment and said, If it's just in terms of hardware, it should be okay. But the people you choose should at least be literate, right? Poplar Fruit was not worried about the software, because as long as the equipment was assembled, Fat Dragon could control it remotely. As for those who can read, Yang Guo was in a bit of a dilemma. He turned his head and looked at Meng Ping. Meng Ping was also in a bit of a dilemma. He said, Don't even think about those who know English. I'm afraid there aren't many who can read. Let's try, Poplar Fruit said. At least 2 to 3 people from each village who can read Chinese and understand Mandarin. Also, it's best if they are not too old and are enthusiastic and responsible. The requirements are really high. Meng Ping shook his head with a bitter smile. But you're right. The person in charge of the school should have such qualities. Meng Ping finally nodded and helped to contact the 16 villages to send people. In order to help stabilize the situation, Poplar Fruit stayed and ate and lived with the staff who stayed. He even took the lead to help them assemble the computers. Poplar Fruit was among them, acting as a translator and a bridge. He helped them integrate into the village's environment. Although he could not change the nature of these guys who were otaku, At least they would not be so isolated in the village for the time being. When they went out and saw them, they would not lower their heads and pretend not to see them like before. They would greet them and ask about their well-being. They felt the enthusiasm of the villagers. The children in the village were also willing to communicate with them. When they were resting, they would be surrounded by energetic children who devoutly listened to them talk about the outside world. The difficult environment could not be changed, but it could change their view of the people here. Many people told Yang Guo in private. It turns out that these villagers are just like them. They are all alive and have a strong desire for a better life. Especially those children. Although they were a little pitiful, they were just as cute as the children in the city. They even had the simplicity that they had lost for a long time. A staff member told Poplar Fruit about a little boy who went up the mountain and did not care about his arm being cut by a tree branch just to get him 2 warm bird eggs. When the staff member held the eggs, he was so moved that he could not help but cry. Originally, Poplar Fruit had planned to persuade them with Meng Ping if it really did not work out. However, he had underestimated the importance that the villages placed on the children's education. In less than 2 days, every village had sent people over, and some villages even sent 4 or 5 people. Children's education is important. Even if they can't get into university, they can still earn more by working. The children in the village who don't study will be discriminated against when they go out. Seeing how successful the Xiong family is, we can't sit still. A village elder led the group. He rubbed his hands and smiled at Poplar Fruit and Meng Ping. If we can help, we will not shirk our duty. Meng Ping looked excited as he hugged him and said, "You are right. Only by studying can we change our lives. Thank you, thank you." His words of gratitude came from the bottom of his heart, and he should be the one to say it. After all, education was originally the job of the Education Bureau, but they could not do it well. They needed people like Poplar Fruit to make a breakthrough. Even when they encountered difficulties, he did not lend a helping hand like the villagers. Meng Ping felt guilty. Seeing the huge reinforcements from the various villages, Poplar Fruit felt a surge of new strength in his heart. He could not do anything, but looking at the spirited faces, Poplar Fruit believed that not only would their work not be delayed, they might even be able to complete it ahead of time. Poplar Fruit did not continue to stay because his usefulness was no longer obvious. He had to return to Yangcheng. There, he was needed to recruit more university students to join their charity work. Seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendation greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 959. After Poplar Fruit returned home, the happiest person was Kiki, but the most unhappy person was Kiki. She was angry and complained about her father's frequent absence. Compared to the past, Poplar Fruit not only went on business trips more frequently this year, but he also often didn't bring Kiki along. Although Sister Bebe was at home, Kiki still felt empty. Her father's position in Kiki's heart was unique. Even Kiki's favorite sister Bebe couldn't replace her father as her companion. Originally, Kiki didn't stick to her father much, but this time when her father went out, Kiki always had a sense of crisis in her heart that her father didn't want Kiki anymore. Therefore, Poplar Fruit helplessly found that the little girl began to become clingy. She needed her father to feed her when she ate, play with her father, take care of her father when she bathed, tell her father a story when she slept, and wake up in the morning when her father woke up. Sometimes, when Poplar Fruit had things to do, Kiki wouldn't let Fong Bebe do it. When Poplar Fruit went to class, Kiki also held her father's hand tightly, and didn't allow her father to leave no matter what. Later, Poplar Fruit had to take Kiki to class. Although the little girl was quite obedient and sat on the chair next to him, it was still inconvenient and bad influence. However, Poplar Fruit still thought it through. If it was bad influence, then it was bad influence. As long as Kiki was happy, it was fine. Because of her father's company, the tension and worry on the little girl's face had disappeared without a trace. Instead, it was replaced by a bell-like laughter every second of every day. It could be said that it was an unrestrained laughter or a silly laughter. But Yanghua felt that her daughter's laughter was the most beautiful music in the world. For her happiness, it was worth sacrificing even a little bit. However, This also had something to do with Poplar Fruit's decreasing attention in the country. Since the beginning of the year, he hadn't accepted any media interviews and didn't participate in any television programs. Naturally, his exposure had decreased rapidly. The environment in the country was like this. Even if he was an A-list celebrity, if he didn't appear in the public eye often, he would be easily forgotten. Moreover, Poplar Fruit wasn't a celebrity to begin with, and there was no management company to promote him. At the beginning of the month, Poplar Fruit became popular for a while because of Running Man's appearance. However, that was a Korean program after all. Apart from loyal RM fans, no one else knew about this news. Half a month had passed, and the headlines changed a few times. How many people in the country still remembered the commotion caused by Poplar Fruit? This was good too. Without the media's pursuit, Poplar Fruit's life had returned to normal. Apart from the fact that there were many admirers in school who would pop up from time to ask for his autograph, he was no different from an ordinary person. If the media still pursued him relentlessly, and the fact that Poplar Fruit brought Kiki to class was exposed, who knew how many people would criticize him? Poplar Fruit spent a lot of energy on Kiki, but he didn't neglect Fong Beibei either. The two of them were still glued to each other, and couldn't wait to stick together all the time. However, after a few days, Poplar Fruit realized that Fong Beibei had started reading books on economics and management. This made Poplar Fruit a little confused. After asking, Poplar Fruit was shocked to hear that Fong Beibei wanted to take a double major in management. Baby, didn't you dislike studying finance and management? Why do you have to force yourself to take this double major? Poplar Fruit knew Fong Beibei better than her mother. He knew that Fong Beibei not only disliked it, but also resisted it. She used to tell Poplar Fruit that studying mathematics in school was simple and pure. She had to spend time and effort to deal with relationships when it came to finance. That's right, numbers were all little elves that were active in the 2D world. They wouldn't lie, and they didn't need to think about complicated emotions or come into contact with the dark side of humans. They were perfect for a kind and pure girl like Fong Beibei. If Fong Beibei really wanted to take a double major, she should have started before the end of her freshman year. Why did she have to catch the last bus of her sophomore year? I want to help you. Fong Beibei's answer shocked and moved Poplar Fruit. It turned out that when Poplar Fruit came back and told Fong Beibei what had happened on the mountain, he also lamented that the distance education charity fund needed more standardized management, but it was difficult to find suitable managers. Then Fong Beibei stupidly wanted to learn management by herself, so that she could help Poplar Fruit after she learned it. Silly. Poplar Fruit hugged her and couldn't help but laugh. He pinched Fong Beibei's nose and said, "Why do we need you to do it?" Although there aren't many talents who are willing to do a good job in public welfare, it doesn't mean that there aren't any. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "I asked Brother Yao from Xinda and Teacher Peng Yu from New Translation Road to help me find suitable managers. Even if they can't work for long, they can help us for a year or two. A year or two is enough for us to cultivate our own management talents." Poplar Fruit said confidently, "I have already discussed with Wang Yuba to let him go to the foundation for an internship, learn from the managers recruited from outside, and gain some experience in running a charity fund." Wang Yuba was indeed a very good young man. He was very talented in management. It was just that he majored in French and lacked working experience in society. After all, the operation of a company in society was far more complicated than that of a school club. "Isn't he together with Shan Shan?" Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "So he is reluctant to leave our distance education platform. As for you," Poplar Fruit kissed Fong Beibei's forehead and said with a smile, "You don't need to learn management that you don't like so painfully. With so many friends helping you, there is no need for my wife to do it." "Who's your wife?" Fong Beibei rolled her eyes at him, but still said hesitantly, "But I still feel very useless. I can't help you with anything." In the past, the two of them were still studying games together, but now Fong Beibei felt that the trajectory of her and Poplar Fruit's trajectory was getting bigger and bigger. Fong Beibei could not get involved in Poplar Fruit's translation work. Now that there was a problem with the distance education platform, she could only watch. Even if they were both students, She did not know how to help Poplar Fruit with the typesetting when Poplar Fruit wrote a thesis. Only Poplar Fruit was taking care of her all the time, and she could only hide under Poplar Fruit's wings. She was completely useless. Isn't there a saying? Poplar Fruit said with a smile. I am responsible for earning money to support the family, and you are responsible for being beautiful. I don't mean that you are a vase. What I mean is that I hope you can have your own interests and hobbies, and have your own career. For example, you can study math problems. If you can live a happy life, it will be the best help you can give me. Poplar Fruit thought that by saying this, Fong Beibei would be able to put down her worries. However, he did not expect that this matter had quietly buried a hidden danger between them. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 960. Poplar Fruit won the award. After receiving the certificate of the National Top 10 University student, the news of Poplar Fruit winning the award spread like wildfire, especially among the students of the major universities in Guangdong Province. Although the National Top 10 University Student Award had never been noticed by people, compared to the real national scholarship and school scholarship, this kind of false reputation was difficult to enter the eyes of the students. However, this time, because Poplar Fruit won the award, the Poplar Fruit who was famous last year, things began to become a little different. However, in the eyes of these proud sons of heaven, Poplar Fruit was not qualified to win this award. They felt that it was a little inconceivable. A star can be regarded as a star who has appeared in the limelight, can get the National Top 10 University Student Award with his fame? Then, wouldn't schools like Beijing Film and Television, which specialize in cultivating stars, be able to win all the honors in one basket? These people were not fans of Poplar Fruit, or it could be said that they were fake fans. They only knew a little about Poplar Fruit. They discussed this issue on social media and gradually moved closer to a conspiracy theory. However, at this time, Poplar Fruit had already begun his tour of Guangdong Province's universities. Most of the major universities in Guangdong Province were in Yangcheng, or in the cities around Yangcheng. This was more convenient for Poplar Fruit. At least it solved the problem of him running around and Kiki complaining. The first event was held at Guangdong Province Normal University. Fong Beibei held Kiki's small hand and accompanied Poplar Fruit into the venue. Kiki's arrival caused a sensation among the hundreds of university students in the venue. Although the little girl was young because of her good looks, naive and cute, and good at acting cute, she had a large group of fans on the internet. Many of the fans who followed Poplar Fruit's Weibo were actually just hoping that Poplar Fruit would post more photos and notes of Kiki's daily life. They wanted to witness Kiki's growth with Poplar Fruit. Kiki, Kiki, Kiki. There was an earth-shattering call. In the venue, regardless of whether it was a boy or a girl, they couldn't help but follow the others and shout together. Kiki, who was focused on her father, heard the waves of calls and was a little confused. Kiki? The little girl thought that there was someone here with the same name as Kiki. She shook her adorable ponytail head and looked left and right at Pampan. Poplar Fruit heard everyone's call, and was a little surprised. He turned his head and looked at Fong Beibei with a smile. The two of them now had a tacit understanding. Just by looking at each other, they understood each other's meaning. Poplar Fruit took Kiki's little hand, and let her climb up the high steps to the stage. Papa, there are two Kiki. Kiki raised her head, shook her father's hand, raised two little fingers, and said somewhat innocently, "Haha, who said there are two Kiki?" Poplar Fruit lowered his head and hugged Kiki, asked with a smile. Kiki pointed to the students below the stage who were shouting more vigorously because of her, and said with certainty, Because brothers and sisters are all calling Kiki. And the second Kiki. Then brothers and sisters may also be calling you. Poplar Fruit asked puzzledly. No. Kiki shook her head and said, Kiki doesn't know brothers and sisters. Kiki's logic was very clear. Since she didn't know the other party also didn't know her. So the other party called Kiki not Kiki. Haha, but Kiki, these brothers and sisters are really calling you. Poplar Fruit took Kiki's little hand and waved to the students below the stage. You don't know them, but brothers and sisters know Kiki. They like you. If you don't believe me, listen. There was no need to listen. The enthusiastic cheers and waving of the students below the stage already explained everything. Kiki was originally fine, but knowing that so many people like her, she became a little shy. She blinked her big eyes and suddenly blushed and hid in her father's arms. The little girl's shy appearance made the students below the stage even more fond of her. They laughed and finally, Poplar Fruit asked for the microphone and said a few words to control the somewhat chaotic scene. The scene was handed over to the student union's host. Poplar Fruit carried Kiki down the stage and handed her over to Fong Beibei, who was sitting below the stage. However, the attention brought by the little girl still hasn't subsided. The distant students couldn't see it, but the students sitting in the first few rows were simply overjoyed. Not only the students, but several teachers next to them also couldn't help but turn their head and tease Kiki with a smile. How old is Kiki? Kiki's speech is really good. Do you know how to recite Tang poems? There were so many questions that Kiki was a little overwhelmed. Under Fong Beibei's encouragement, she answered a few questions, and then became a little unhappy. Not knowing who started it, many students plucked up their courage, and before it started, one by one, ran over to take photos with Kiki. Fong Beibei was too embarrassed to reject, so she could only let Kiki suffer. Those adults held her little hand for a while and pinched her face for a while, making Kiki feel as though she was being watched in a zoo. And this was the treatment that Fong Beibei blocked for her. Finally, the little girl pouted her little mouth and called out unhappily, "Kiki doesn't want to play with you guys anymore." She turned her head and hid herself in Sister Beibei's embrace. No matter how others coaxed her, she was unwilling to pop her head out. Fortunately, the host over there had already called for everyone to return to their seats. Poplar Fruit's speech was about to begin. Kiki doesn't like it. She sneakily raised her little head and peeked out an eye to look at the surroundings. When she saw that her brothers and sisters who were touching her had all left, Chi-Chi moved closer to Sister Beibei's ear and muttered, "What don't you like?" Fong Beibei whispered to her, "I don't like brothers and sisters." Kiki pouted her little mouth, poked and acted out, "Brothers and sisters are bad," pinching Kiki. "Kiki is not Papa's steamed buns." Fong Beibei couldn't help but laugh. Ordinary people really couldn't understand the logic behind Kiki's words. Poplar Fruit didn't often make steamed buns, but Kiki loved to eat the steamed buns made by her father. Every time he made the dough, Chi-Chi would watch helplessly from the side as her father kneaded the dough into various shapes. Today, Kiki felt that her little face was almost like the dough that her father kneaded when he made steamed buns. It was so painful. "That's because they like you," Fong Beibei said with a smile. "They like to play with you because they like you." Kiki thought about it. It seemed to be the case, but Kiki still didn't like this feeling. No one would be happy if their face was constantly pinched and touched. The little girl shook her head and said, "But Kiki still doesn't like it." "Sister Beibei, let's go home, okay?" Kiki played with the crowd of Mama behind them and whispered in Fong Beibei's ear. It seemed that Kiki wouldn't dare to pester her father to come over next time. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 961. Let's welcome Poplar Fruit, who has won the title of one of the top 10 students in the country, to give a speech. Let's welcome him with a round of applause. Poplar Fruit came up with a microphone in his hand and a smile on his face. His expression was very calm, without any nervousness or panic. Everyone even felt that the school leaders who came up to read the script did not have the same calm demeanor as Poplar Fruit. Today, Poplar Fruit was dressed casually like he usually did when he gave speeches. He wore a pair of jeans that gave off a youthful vibe and a polo shirt that was not from a famous brand. He looked like a big brother next door. Of course, if Poplar Fruit had a 2-year-old child at home, it was possible to treat him as a handsome uncle like the immortal legend Lin Jiying. He stood upright on the stage with a microphone in his hand. He did not have a script or any decorations. He had an extraordinary temperament, and his long legs were also one of the focal points of the audience. After the applause and cheers gradually subsided, Poplar Fruit raised the microphone and said with a smile, "In the past, people introduced me as a famous model, an internet celebrity, the Nobel Prize winner teacher Mo Yan's personal translator, and later, Kiki's father. The students in the audience laughed knowingly. Now there is finally a little change. I have become one of the top 10 students in the country, Poplar Fruit. But in the end it is still not me, not just me. Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said with a smile, "Of course, I think you are here to listen to Poplar Fruit's speech, not the speech of one of the top 10 students in the country, right?" The laughter of agreement gradually turned into applause. Poplar Fruit did not make any humorous jokes, but every sentence was sincere. In other words, every sentence was spoken to the bottom of everyone's heart. "Of course, I am not looking down on one of the top 10 students in the country," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "In fact, I feel that compared to the other students who have won the award, I am still lacking a lot in terms of spirit." This is also a question that many netizens are discussing online. Poplar Fruit smiled and said frankly, "Therefore for me, this award is not only an affirmation of my past, but also a whip for my future. It reminds me not to be arrogant too early, and reminds me to do more and better." So this is also the topic of my report today. Poplar Fruit pressed the remote control, and the first page of his PowerPoint presentation popped up on the big screen behind him. Poplar Fruit said loudly, "A society with love, the mission of us college students." Poplar Fruit laughed. This topic is a bit big and empty, and before I started talking about it, probably many students had already started yawning, and then complained in their hearts, "Hey, it's politics class again. If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have come." Poplar Fruit, of course, would not force everyone to give a sincere answer in front of the teacher and the principal, and then make everyone feel awkward. After a pause, he said directly, "Everyone, please rest assured that today is not a politics class. I will tell you 3 stories that I have personally experienced. I hope everyone can be inspired by it." There was another round of applause, and the eyes of the students below the stage sparkled. They began to feel that Poplar Fruit was a bit interesting. He was different from the people who usually gave presentations, but he was more like a very good speaker. Not only was he kind, but he also did not play by the rules. This was also because they did not know Poplar Fruit well. At Higashiyama University, the students of Poplar Fruit were already used to Poplar Fruit's unscripted speech. Moreover, Poplar Fruit rarely talked nonsense, and the audience was often immersed in his brainstorm, without a minute or second of space for them to be distracted. Poplar Fruit had prepared a lot of material for this series of speeches. Unlike in the past, he used a PowerPoint for the first time. Of course, Poplar Fruit would not use all kinds of special effects and subtitles to impress the audience. In Poplar Fruit's speech, photos and so on were all auxiliary. He relied more on his mouth to tell the content that he had already prepared in his mind. "It was a summer in the year 2002. Poplar Fruit said somewhat wittily, a bit like reading lyrics. He talked about his somewhat legendary encounter with Seong Jiwoo and the Seong family village, as if he was telling a story. It was also from that time that I began to be a little curious. I was curious as to why an honest father with limited mobility would take such a big risk to rob a passerby. So I followed him up the mountain. At that time, I was holding my daughter. Anyway, the car was broken, and there was nowhere to go. I wanted to help him. Although he broke my car, if what he said was true, I hoped to be able to help him. I found that the days on the mountain were really hard. You can see it from these photos." Poplar Fruit projected several photos that he had taken himself on the big screen. He pointed and said, "If you want to go up the mountain, it will take more than 2 hours for people who are not skilled to climb up. The mountain path is steep, the shrubs are overgrown, and there is even a cableway that will make your legs go soft when you stand on it. Because of this reason, it led to the information congestion on the mountain. People's material standards could not be improved, let alone make a fortune." Poplar Fruit took out a photo of Kiki and some Miao children when he had just arrived at the Seong family village. Those children's clothes were ragged, their faces were dirty, and there was a hunger yellow of malnutrition. Kiki looked white and tender, wearing neat and clean clothes. The contrast was quite sharp. "That's Brother Xiaofeng." And Kiki, who was below the stage, saw the photo and said happily while hugging Fong Beibei. Her gloomy mood from before was swept away. In the beginning, I wanted to help a person, or a family. That is, Brother Xiong's family, who damaged my car. Poplar Fruit took out the next tombstone of Teacher Meng and said with a heavy heart. But after I heard about Teacher Meng's story, my thoughts began to change. This is also the first story that I want to tell you today. Poplar Fruit's previous story was just a prelude. He paused and began to tell the story of Teacher Meng, who had been teaching on the mountain for decades. He actually retired. Due to health reasons, he was not in good health when he retired. He stayed in the hospital for more than a year, almost 2 years. Poplar Fruit looked at everyone and said, however, in these 2 years, the Education Bureau of Litong County couldn't find a second person to replace him to teach the children of the 3 Miao villages, including the Xiong family village. Other than the fact that it was far away, hard, and they couldn't see the end of it, there was also the corruption of the officialdom in Litong County at that time. Many of the funds for poverty alleviation and voluntary teaching were embezzled by the local government. What's more, it was later found that these people not only arranged for their relatives to take advantage of the salary, but also embezzled the bonuses and raises of these rural teachers for so many years. Poplar Fruit smiled and took out a screenshot of a report at that time. Fortunately, they got the punishment they deserved. But Teacher Meng didn't see any hope at that time. Poplar Fruit said solemnly, although his family hid it, he still found out that the children on the mountain had been out for 2 years. Teacher Meng resolutely came out of the hospital and returned to the mountain to continue teaching. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to. Chapter 962. Mr. Meng's story is too tragic. But when Poplar Fruit painfully told the story of Mr. Meng's life on the podium, many girls with shallow tear ducts couldn't help but shed tears. Even those who didn't cry had red eyes. Telling everyone Mr. Meng's story is not only to let everyone know that he is an unknown but spiritually great old man, but I also hope that everyone can expand your thinking from this matter. Poplar Fruit said, facing this kind of situation, what can we as university students do? Poplar Fruit looked at the student's contemplative expression, and suddenly remembered the scene a few days ago, when he went to the education department to talk to Uncle Jean about the content of his speech at various universities. Uncle Jean was shocked and silent. He was also on the front line of education, so how could he not know about the education environment in China? Even in the economically developed Guangdong province, there are also poor mountainous areas that lack education resources. I can't do what Mr. Meng can do. Poplar Fruit suddenly interrupted everyone's contemplation and said frankly, I can teach on that mountain for a month, 2 months, or even 3 months, but not to mention decades like Mr. Meng. I can't even do it for a year. The students looked at Poplar Fruit in shock. They didn't know why he would say such a thing. One must know that saying such a thing would have a negative impact on him. I know that you all might look down on me. Poplar Fruit smiled calmly and said, but this is the truth. I can't persist, not because of the environment. I was born in a poor village, so I can still get used to it. It's because I am in Yangcheng. Not only do I have my studies, but I also have my own circle of friends, and I also have a lover and children that I can't bear to part with. I can't make such a big sacrifice like Mr. Meng. The uproar gradually subsided. Everyone was a university student, so they still have the ability to think for themselves. They re-examined Poplar Fruit's words and put themselves in his shoes. Then they realized that not only Poplar Fruit, but they also can't stay on the mountain for decades like Mr. Meng. But the children need education. Poplar Fruit said solemnly, I've learned that because they are uneducated, even if they work in the city after they grow up, they can only earn a meager amount of hard-earned money. It is impossible for them to establish a foothold in the city, let alone become successful, and return to their hometown when they grow up. Now their father's generation is like this, and they are still like this. This is an endless cycle. The cities are getting richer while the poor mountainous areas continue to be poor. Poplar Fruit gestured. So the second story I want to tell you is about change, the change brought about by distance education. Last year, I went to the US with a friend from a publishing house to try to persuade Mr. Yang Martel, the author of Young School's Fantasy Drifting, whose movie box office sales and imported translation sales were very high at the end of last year. During that time, we came to UCLA, which is also the UCLA that everyone is more familiar with. Poplar Fruit cut into the topic that everyone was confused about. He smiled and said, "I accidentally broke into a classroom. At that time, the professor inside was teaching, and what surprised me was that there was a camera behind the classroom." Then, Poplar Fruit talked about some of the procedures of the public class that inspired him. "That's exactly why, when I was on the mountain, I observed the sky all day and night. That is, I couldn't sleep at night and looked at the stars." Poplar Fruit laughed. Suddenly, an idea flashed in my mind. "That's right. Why can't we do distance education?" The greatest convenience that the age of technology has given us is that technology has helped us shorten the distance in space. Cars, ships, planes, computers, the internet, and mobile phones. These can break the constraints of distance. Poplar Fruit said, "Since we can't walk to the mountain to help these children, we can teach them through distance education." Then Poplar Fruit began to talk about how he, Fat Dragon, and Kai Simin built the first multi-purpose classroom in Xiong Family Village. In the middle, there were some photos that recorded the birth of this miracle. It's undeniable that in the process, we spent more than $1 million. This cost isn't small. Previously, a classmate from the Multidimensional Teaching Society asked me if this money was distributed equally to each child. Would it be enough to support them to go down the mountain to study in the county? Poplar Fruit said, "It's not unreasonable, but the results of the past 6 months of distance education tell us that this money is well spent." Why did he say that? Poplar Fruit listed a few benefits of distance education for them to see. First, the children were young, and there were people to take care of them while they studied and lived nearby. Second, the teachers of distance education were all university students who followed the trends of the times. The children taught by them were more motivated to learn, and their learning efficiency was obviously higher than the children in the county. Third, the extension of distance education was strong. Poplar Fruit smiled and showed everyone some of the extracurricular interest courses that the children could freely choose to take. This kind of teaching model not only increased the interest of teaching, but also gave the children many opportunities to develop and learn. There were many other benefits. Poplar Fruit chose a few of the most important ones to tell the students, but he realized that they were completely engrossed in it. This was because these were already beyond their imagination. Compared to the university education they were currently receiving, they felt that the distance education that the children in the mountain areas received was more ultra-modern. Here's a picture. You can take a look at it. I took it when I returned to the mountain at the beginning of this year. Although these children's clothes haven't changed much, you can see a kind of hope in their eyes. It's the longing for the future, and the desire to break free from poverty. I didn't see this when I went to the mountain last summer. Poplar Fruit said with some emotion. At this moment, the audience burst into thunderous applause. Everyone present looked at him with a kind of worship. This was not a kind of idolization, but a kind of respect for Poplar Fruit, who had done incredible things. Poplar Fruit bowed and thanked them. After the applause subsided, Poplar Fruit was not in a hurry to tell the third story. Instead, he put down the remote control and said to everyone, "Students, although we have achieved great results in the past semester, the teaching model of distance education still has a big flaw." Everyone was stunned. They did not understand why Poplar Fruit would suddenly say such a thing. They also could not figure out what the flaw was that Poplar Fruit was talking about. They could not see it. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to. Chapter 963. Nothing was perfect, let alone a brand new long-distance education system that had no precedents. Poplar Fruit didn't keep them in suspense. He explained, "Currently our long-distance education system is being taught by university volunteers. From year 1 to year 6, from Chinese to mathematics to English, all the subjects are taught by university volunteers. Of course, this kind of hard work is worth encouraging." Poplar Fruit smiled. Many of the students are even better than some of the famous local teachers. This is what the director of the Education Bureau of Litong County told me personally. The students below the stage all applauded one after another. However, they might be a little unconvinced in their hearts because they were professionals. The students of the normal university were definitely professionals in teaching. Many of them were able to enter the local key high schools as soon as they graduated. Currently, because there are very few students in Xiong Village, this model is still working. However, in a few months, when the other 16 poor villages in Litong County have completed their long-distance education schools, we will face a problem. Poplar Fruit said loudly. It's not that there aren't enough teachers. I believe that our university students have such a kind heart. They are willing to sacrifice 1 or 2 hours of their free time every week to help these children in the mountainous areas. Poplar Fruit said, what I am worried about is that we have more and more volunteers. If the training can't keep up, it will easily lead to an obvious gap in educational standards. So we are discussing a new solution. Poplar Fruit smiled. Just like teaching materials, we will gather the outstanding volunteers and record videos of each class. Then, we will let our university volunteers on duty use these videos to guide the students in learning. In the past, our volunteers played the role of teachers. Now they are more like big brothers and sisters who understand them well. They help them understand the curriculum knowledge and answer their questions in time. Poplar Fruit walked confidently on the podium, changed his position and continued. I believe that this role is more suitable for our university volunteers, because they have abandoned the burden of teaching. In the past, this might have deterred them, but now they can devote more energy to the management of the classroom, the control of the curriculum, and the in-depth analysis of the areas that the students find difficult to understand. Poplar Fruit smiled. I believe that our university volunteers can do better under this model. That's true. Poplar Fruit didn't wait for the students to applaud. He continued, at the beginning of this year's semester, we tested it with the children in Xiong Village. Later, we found that the results were really good. Not only was the quality of the children's learning better, but our volunteers also said that the service was much easier. Yonggwa looked into the students' eyes and said with a smile, now that we have finished writing the new system, it will be fully operational next month. In other words, nearly 5,000 poor students in Lidong County will be able to receive the best long-distance education under this new system. At this time, Poplar Fruit was like a giant standing on the stage. With a wave of his hand, he drew a rainbow in the sky. This time, the applause finally caught up with Poplar Fruit's pace. Even Fong Beibei was clapping, blushing. He is my boyfriend. Fong Beibei thought proudly. Kiki looked around in confusion, scratched her little head, and thought, what is Papa talking about? But Papa is so handsome. Poplar Fruit laughed. When the applause subsided, he said, after receiving the award, I reported the long-distance education project to Director Su of the Department of Education. Director Su told me that it was a good thing. He hoped that if the results in Litong County were good, it would benefit the children in the poor areas of Guangdong Province and northern Guangdong. Then, Director Su asked me if we needed the help of the Department of Education to transfer excellent primary school teachers to record videos for us. Poplar Fruit said, when I heard Director Su's words, my first reaction was to be happy, because a non-governmental public welfare organization like us, a charity organization started by students, can actually receive strong support from the government. That is really a glory. Ha! The students in the audience laughed. They felt that Poplar Fruit was very sincere, saying all these things. However, after thinking about it, I still refused. Poplar Fruit immediately gave them a magical twist. Before they could be shocked, Poplar Fruit explained, the reason is very simple. I am not talking about who can teach well, but excellent primary school teachers may not be able to be as passionate as our college volunteers. Besides, our videos are not static. In the future, we need to set up a special teaching and research group to integrate the data obtained by our system and make timely adjustments to the children's learning situation. As for the teachers who are transferred, their videos may be more suitable for their own students in terms of progress, and their teaching may not be very targeted. Poplar Fruit shouted loudly, so, I believe that even if we don't have professional experience, with the enthusiasm and wisdom of college students, we can definitely do better, don't you think so? Yes. The students in the audience responded crazily. They puffed out their chests and felt a sense of pride that was recognized. Although I declined Director Sue's promise, I still got good support from Director Sue for the long-distance education project. Poplar Fruit said with a smile, "We still have to admit that the excellent teachers who have taught for decades are much more experienced than us. So, the Department of Education will arrange excellent teachers to train our college volunteers. With the guidance of these seniors, I believe that our college volunteers will take fewer detours and be able to do better." Listening to the applause below the stage, Poplar Fruit also smiled brightly. He asked with a smile, "Students, after hearing me say so much, are you willing to join our long-distance education project together? Just by contributing 1 or 2 hours that you usually spend playing games, shopping, and sleeping in, you can help more children who can't go to school, so that the next generation of our motherland can fight for a better future for them fairly." Yes. The applause was thunderous, and many students who were excited by Poplar Fruit's speech waved their hands and shouted excitedly, "Thank you, everyone, thank you." Poplar Fruit bowed, but his speech was not over. He raised his head and smiled. "I know that everyone has a kind heart, but don't worry, listen to my last story first. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk." Chapter 964. Last week at this time, I was still in Lidong County. Poplar Fruit looked at the students who had quieted down and began to talk about the recent strike by the employees who had been hired to install the computers. At that time, their leader stood in front of me, pointed his finger at my nose and said, "I've had enough of this godforsaken place." He told me very clearly that they were quitting. The next day, 16 of them went down the mountain and got on the bus back home, and we never contacted them again. Poplar Fruit avoided the important points and mentioned the trivial points. He did not mention that they had threatened him for compensation. The students looked at Poplar Fruit in shock, and Fong Beibei also clenched her fists. Her eyes showed that she felt sorry for Poplar Fruit. Only she knew how much the strike had hurt Poplar Fruit. It was as if his beliefs had been questioned by others. It was a good thing for public welfare, so why would someone be so selfish? I'm not saying this because I want you to blame anyone. I just want to tell you the truth. Doing public welfare is not as easy as you think. If you really want to join the cause of distance education, you have to be mentally prepared to contribute and endure hardships. Poplar Fruit said. He suddenly laughed, like a spring breeze blowing past, sweeping away the solemn atmosphere. He said, "But don't be afraid, because for most of the student volunteers, you only need to be willing to contribute a little of your spare time, and you can participate in our campus. And you have seen it before." Poplar Fruit shrugged and smiled. Under the new model, the threshold for participating in public welfare has been further lowered. I hope to see all the caring friends who can contribute their own strength to the children in the mountain area. The students responded with a knowing laugh. Their mood, which had been affected by the strike, gradually recovered. As I said before, we still have 13 employees who have stayed with us and continued to work on the mountain, but we are still understaffed. Poplar Fruit did not finish his story. The strike was just a prelude. What Poplar Fruit wanted to convey to the students was positive energy. However, the impact of what he said was not as strong as what they saw. When Poplar Fruit smiled and clicked on the photo, more than 70 simple meow people from 16 villages filled the screen. They were either shy or laughing, and their eyes were full of excitement as they looked at the camera. More than 800 students in the audience were deeply shocked and moved. "I think they are really cute. It's completely different from what I imagined." Poplar Fruit smiled. "I used to see on TV and the news that farmers in poor areas were unwilling to let their children go to school, because one more person means one more labor force. But the reality is not like that. When I was in the countryside, the elders were proud of the children's good grades. Even my grandmother, who was still alive and didn't know anything about education, would tell me to get into a good school every New Year's Day. Poplar Fruit said with a smile. The people in the poor mountainous areas of Litong County also understood that if they did not study, they would not be able to change their fate. Even if they came out to work, they would be discriminated against everywhere. So, we felt their enthusiasm, and we also felt the desire for knowledge of these people who came to help. Poplar Fruit said. This is a very good start. It has given me more confidence in the development goal that I first established for the Distance Education Charity Fund and the New Dimension Voluntary Education Association, which is to bring knowledge and hope to the poor mountainous areas. Not only that, Poplar Fruit said. Not only did we feel the enthusiasm of the adults, but we also felt the enthusiasm of the children in the villages. Poplar Fruit brought up a picture on the screen. It was an ordinary employee and a skinny but lively meow child. It could be seen that the employee was touched and holding 2 bird eggs, wiping his tears. The meow child's right arm was tied with a bloody cloth, but he was smiling very brightly, revealing 2 missing front teeth. Poplar Fruit explained to them. Previously, this child heard from his parents that many uncles ran away because of the bad environment. So he ran up the mountain and climbed a 10-meter-tall tree just to get 2 bird eggs for the uncle that he greeted. And during this process, everyone saw that there was a long cut on his right hand, caused by a tree branch. The child's thoughts were very simple. He thought that after the 2 bird eggs were cooked, they would be very delicious food. At the very least, they could improve the poor standard of food and accommodation. He wanted to keep the uncle because he felt that the uncle was his hope. I can even tell everyone that before this, they only communicated through body language, because the child only knew how to speak meow language, and had not had the opportunity to learn Mandarin. Poplar Fruit said. Poplar Fruit saw that there was no reaction, so he continued. Later, our employee told me that he was very glad that he did not go with the crowd and leave with those who were making a fuss. He now felt that his persistence over the past few days was worth it. Even if he had to work hard for a few more months, as long as he could help these cute children, he would not regret it. In fact, the students below the stage were very touched, but they felt suffocated when they thought about it. They were silent for a while. Then, under the lead of someone, they began to clap desperately. The applause gradually grew louder and louder. It was so loud that it could topple mountains and overturn seas. It was as if the entire venue was about to be overturned. At this point, Poplar Fruit's speech was coming to an end. Although the students of Guangdong Normal University were still listening, Poplar Fruit had already spoken for more than 2 hours, so the report should be over. 3 stories. The first story is about Teacher Meng of Xiong Village. This story touched us and made us reflect on ourselves, and it urged the birth of distance education. The second story is about the children of Xiong Village and our teacher. They proved that distance education is feasible, effective, and promising. Poplar Fruit concluded in a clear voice. As for the third story, on the one hand, it is honesty. I want to be honest with everyone that it is not easy to do public welfare. This road is winding and winding. On the other hand, it is touching. It is because of these little touches that we continue to give. And it is because we give love that we also receive love. Poplar Fruit smiled, revealing his neat teeth. Facing the emotional students, he said, "We college students cannot do much, but there are also many things that we can do. Here, I sincerely invite everyone to join us and bring knowledge and hope to the poor mountainous areas. Together, we can make this society more loving. Together, we can make our college life meaningful and valuable." Looking for monthly votes. Looking for recommendations, greater than or equal to *. Chapter 965. After finishing his speech at Guangdong Normal University, Poplar Fruit discovered that his choice of strategy was very accurate. Not only did many upright students express their willingness to participate in the public service of distance education, 2 days later, a student activity center instructor from Guangdong Normal University contacted Poplar Fruit to discuss the matter of setting up a multi-dimensional public service organization in Guangdong Normal University. This was exactly what Poplar Fruit wanted to see. Although there were more and more people and management would become more difficult, It was still a blessing for the more than 4,000 poor children in Kiradong County who were about to start school. As Poplar Fruit speech continued in Guangdong Normal University, more and more schools joined their ranks. Of course, Poplar Fruit definitely wouldn't take all the credit for himself. After all, it was impossible for him to rely on the influence of his speech to gather the official strength of so many universities. In the midst of this, the most important factor was the efforts of Uncle Jean from the Department of Education. Not only did Uncle Jean contact the Department of Education of Guishan Province to establish a mutual educational relationship between the two provinces, he also suggested that they seriously study the latest public service policies implemented by the central government over the past 2 years. Developing public service and guiding social forces to carry out public service activities is an important measure to make up for the shortcomings of social construction, promote social morality, and promote social harmony. This will allow public service to complement and link up with the state's support system and form a joint force. Suggested that they follow the example of Poplar Fruit, who was one of the top 10 students in the country this year. With a series of push from the Department of Education, the various universities in Guangdong Normal University eagerly set up a branch of the New Dimension Volunteer Teaching Society. For the sake of unifying the names, as well as allowing more university student volunteers to clearly understand the essence of their non-profit society, Yanghua had a discussion with the old backbones of the society, before reluctantly changing the name of the New Dimension Volunteer Teaching to Distance Volunteer Teaching. Although it was a little more old-fashioned than before, it still gave off the feeling of a heavy sword without a sharp edge, great craftsmanship without work. Poplar Fruit brought out the increasingly experienced Wang Yu and had him and Lin Xingshan assist the various universities in setting up branches. However, this didn't mean that Higashiyama University would be the headquarters. In the future, Poplar Fruit's plan was for the branches of the major universities to be autonomous in terms of management and unify their systems to be on par with the headquarters. And this headquarters would be jointly formed by the management of the major universities. Its main role was not to restrict the management of the various branches, but to play an important role in decision-making and supervision. As the name implied, the headquarters would be in charge of the major decisions and directions of the Distance Education Society. All these decisions would be decided by the votes of the representatives of the various universities. Although Poplar Fruit was the one who founded this public welfare association, Poplar Fruit wouldn't make it his own. He believed that only by doing public welfare fair and square could he create real value. As for supervision, it was financial and service supervision. The flow of funds in every branch had to be transparent and subject to the supervision of the headquarters, and it had to be published on their website. The performance of the volunteers would also be evaluated by the students and the headquarters. The data would be collected and submitted to the university at the end of the semester. These volunteer services could be exchanged for real honor and credit bonuses. In the headquarters, they would also select the outstanding professors from the major universities who were willing to contribute more to this public welfare cause to form a teaching and research group. They would record, review, and manage the teaching content of the distance education. There was no need to say more. After all, it was still in the early stages. Many of the ideas were still at the stage of being conceived. In the future, it would take a semester or even more to practice and improve. However, Poplar Fruit and the others were already on the right path. However, for Poplar Fruit, his troubles were far from over. It even broke out in the later stages of his lecture tour. Although Poplar Fruit didn't accept interviews, there were still reports of Poplar Fruit's lecture being published in the newspapers. At first, it was some official mouthpieces that publicized Poplar Fruit being awarded the National Top 10 University Student. Later, the entertainment media that had been searching for Poplar Fruit for a long time also came to join in the fun. They dug up the video of Poplar Fruit's previous lecture that was recorded and uploaded to the internet, and began to hype it up. After all, Poplar Fruit was still a little famous in the past. Many netizens clicked on the video and watched Poplar Fruit's lecture seriously. They all expressed their admiration for Poplar Fruit. It was as if Poplar Fruit had transformed from a mediocre celebrity and a gossip machine into a high-end soul teacher. Many people used keywords like shocked, touched, and even worshipped to express their praise for poplar fruit. This video was no longer a small hit. It was even pinned on the front page of major video websites and became the hottest topic among the hottest topics. At this time, the media finally dug up the funds of the Distance Education Charity Fund. What surprised everyone was that in the charity fund, apart from some scattered individual donations and a few million from foreign friends, Ardle and several senior executives of Blizzard, the remaining nearly 40 million renminbi was actually under the names of Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei joint donation. Is this for real? Where did they get so much money? The entertainment media that dug up this news was also shocked by Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei's generosity. They even ignored the fact that these two guys were showing off their love again. In the storm of public opinion at the end of last year, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei's family background was analyzed in detail by the public. Poplar Fruit was born in a rural area and his family was not rich. Fong Beibei's family was not rich either. The only one who could earn money was Poplar Fruit. Fong Beibei was a very pure student. This matter caused a lot of discussion on the internet. Some people guessed that the money was earned by Poplar Fruit as a model during the Bali Fashion Week. This statement was quickly refuted. Many genuine models jumped out and complained about the hardships of being a model. Even supermodels could not earn much in a year. How could they earn 40 million renminbi just by doing a few shows? This did not make sense. In any case, Poplar Fruit is worthy of our recognition for donating 40 million renminbi to charity. Look at those rich people, who can be as generous as Poplar Fruit. A voice came from Poplar Fruit's fan group. They were very proud of Poplar Fruit. Our parents' leg Appa is still the most handsome. The fans laughed and said, although he's a little too low-key, he's spreading positive energy. Is there any fresh meat group in South Korea that can compare to him? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations, greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 966. Although the discussion about Poplar Fruits, where did he earn 40 million, was rampant on the internet, Poplar Fruit didn't care much about it. With his personality, unless his family or fans were wronged, he wouldn't come out to clarify. Poplar Fruit wouldn't care about such trivial speculations. However, March and April passed in the blink of an eye. Poplar Fruit could be said to be unbearably tired during this period of time. Even if Poplar Fruit's iron-like body couldn't be explained by science, facing a big speech every few days, classes twice a week, the reopened Sinda translation training course, and the translation work at night, he felt that his energy wasn't enough. Fortunately, according to his plan, Poplar Fruit's work could finally come to an end before the May Day holiday. The lecture tour had ended, and at Sinda translation training course, this season's training course had also ended. Poplar Fruit didn't take on translation tasks for a long time. He was just a trainer of Sinda translation training course, fulfilling his promise to Brother Yao and repaying him. Of course, the shares given to him by Sinda translation training course were still kept, so Poplar Fruit didn't feel that he was drifting further and further away from Sinda translation training course. They were still closely connected. After 2 months of hard work, Poplar Fruit also fulfilled his promise to Grandma Menlo. He helped her translate her works into Swedish. Of course, he only translated the most representative works. Grandma Menlo also found other helpers because of time constraints. With a chance to take a breather, Poplar Fruit decided that when the holidays came, he would take Fong Beibei and Kiki and set off again to the land of abundance, Sichuan Province's Shudu city. This was a small trip, and it was also a chance to celebrate Chi-Chi's second birthday. That's right, in the blink of an eye sweat. Kiki was already 2 years old. It's true. I feel like Kiki was just born yesterday. Holding Fong Beibei's hand, Poplar Fruit smiled as he looked at Kiki, who was bouncing in front of him. He muttered to his girlfriend, "When I woke up this morning, I was a little dazed. I even remembered the scene where I carried Kiki from the doctor's arms." At that time, Poplar Fruit was also dumbfounded. Looking at the wrinkled little life, there was only one voice left in his mind. "She is my daughter? She's my daughter." When he returned to reality, his surroundings had changed from white to green Dufu cottage. Beside him was no longer the lonely knight, but Fong Beibei, who was looking at him affectionately. She was a woman as important as Kiki in his life. At that time, the little life that could be grasped with both hands had not even opened her eyes. Now, she was like a little fairy, playing in the mountains and rivers, using her bell-like laughter to wash away the shadows of the bamboo and flower paths of the early summer sun. When I first saw Kiki, she was only 2 months old, right? Fong Beibei smiled sweetly and walked side by side with Poplar Fruit. While looking at Kiki, she recalled, "At that time, I still remember that when I turned around, I saw a dumb uncle secretly looking at me." Poplar Fruit scratched his head embarrassedly and refuted, "I'm not that old, right? Although I was a little dispirited at that time, because I was going to take graduation photos with my junior sister, I even went to shave my hair and beard. No matter what, I was still a handsome young man." Fong Beibei said with a smile, "No, it's just that when I first saw Kiki sitting on your chest, I felt that you were a little old." "Speaking of this, I still remember," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "I remember that Kiki's first kiss was given to you. In the past, when I coaxed her to kiss her father, Kiki ignored me. But when you kissed her, Kiki took the initiative to kiss you." "Hee, it means that Kiki is closer to me." Fong Beibei pulled Poplar Fruit's hand back and forth proudly and said, "If you go out often and go out early and come back late, Kiki will only recognize me as her sister Beibei. She won't like Papa, humph, Kiki won't like Papa anymore. I won't in the future. After this period of busy, I will spend more time with you guys," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He lowered his head and said softly in Fong Beibei's ear, "Baby, seriously, when will you let Kiki change the way she calls you?" "How should I call you?" Fong Beibei didn't react at first. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Change it to Mama." Fong Beibei's face flushed. She lowered her head and twisted the back of Poplar Fruit's hand with her left hand. She said shyly, "Why should I change it? Isn't it good now?" In fact, she already knew that this topic would be brought up in the future. After all, their relationship had reached this stage, and the next step was to talk about marriage. Talking about marriage was already on their itinerary. Next month, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei would move into their new home. Poplar Fruit's family would all come to Yangcheng, and at this time, just as Father Fong and Mother Fong had requested before the new year, the two families would meet. Although they wouldn't get married that early, the engagement would be confirmed. Father Fong and Mother Fong's anxiety was understandable. Their daughter was already dead set on Poplar Fruit, and they had gradually accepted Poplar Fruit and Kiki, so they had to take it seriously. If they didn't confirm it early, they wouldn't feel at ease. After all, if there were any changes, the one who would suffer would always be the female. "It's not very good, right?" Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "In the future, when she goes to school, what if people ask her who her mother is? If they can't tell the difference between mother and sister, I'm a little worried that Kiki will be discriminated against." Moreover, mother and daughter, compared to sister and sister, don't you think the former has more motherly love? Actually, Fong Beibei was a little too nervous. She didn't seem to be prepared to be Kiki's mother. Fong Beibei blushed as she pulled Poplar Fruit's hand and said angrily, "You're looking down on Kiki. How can Kiki not be able to tell the difference between mother and sister? Calling her sister, and she's just used to it. Kiki is very smart." Speaking of Chi-Chi, Chi-Chi had arrived. Chi-Chi, who had just run in front, swung her little ponytail and waved her little arms. She had a panicked expression on her face as she ran back like a wisp of smoke and shouted, "Papa, Papa! Stone, there's an old grandpa in the stone." "What?" Thinking that Kiki was frightened, Poplar Fruit didn't have time to continue the previous topic with Fong Beibei. He squatted down and wanted to comfort the little girl. However, Poplar Fruit was wrong. Chi-Chi didn't wait for her father to speak before she grabbed her father's finger in a hurry. She pulled on her father's finger and shouted excitedly, "Papa, Papa and Chi-Chi are here to see." Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he was pulled by Kiki, who was afraid and wanted to see, to a stone statue of Du Fu. He was surprised and laughed, finally understanding why Kiki said that there was an old grandpa in the stone. It turned out that it was a rock that was as tall as a person. However, A magical sculptor had carved a quarter of the rock into the shape of Mr. Dufu's upper body. It was as if Mr. Dufu had merged with the rock. Sister Bebe, look. Kiki jumped around energetically and pulled Fong Bebe's fingers to show her. Fong Bebe was a little infected by Kiki's enthusiasm. Her eyes were smiling as she gently looked at Kiki and Poplar Fruit, and there was an indescribable sweetness flowing in her heart. Perhaps being called mother is also a very blissful thing? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 967. On Kiki's birthday, Poplar Fruit took her to the giant panda base in Shudu City, which was the place where Kiki adopted Chubby Boy last year. Although Chubby Boy's growth had been observed through the videos provided by the website for adopters, Kiki often talked about Chubby Boy and wanted to see Chubby Boy face to face. This time, Poplar Fruit, of course, wanted to fulfill Kiki's wish. When you see Chubby Boy later, can Kiki recognize him? Fong Bebe held her and walked on the wooden arch bridge with a smile. While listening to Poplar Fruit's introduction of what they saw and heard last year, Fong Bebe asked Kiki. Chi-Chi nodded vigorously and said with certainty, "Yes, little fatty is chubby, and then his eyes are black." Before she came, she asked her father to turn on the video call. And then Kiki told Chubby Boy that she was coming. She thought that Chubby Boy, who was on the other side of the video call, could hear it. Although that was what she said, Chi-Chi scratched her head and muttered to herself when she saw the cage full of fat pandas with dark circles under their eyes. "This is little fatty. No, that's little fatty. Aya. Why are there so many chubby boys? Kiki can't recognize them." In order to recognize her Chubby Boy, Kiki leaned against the window, and her small nose was pressed flat. However, it seemed that all the pandas looked the same, especially those babies who were not fully grown yet. "We can't go in, right?" Fong Bebe, like Kiki, was a curious baby. She excitedly handed Kiki to Poplar Fruit, and then took out a Polaroid camera from her bag. This was bought by Poplar Fruit for her this month. Fong Bebe didn't like Poplar Fruit's bulky SLR camera. Instead, she liked the light and cute Polaroid camera. Although she usually took photos with her mobile phone, when she wanted to take photos for her collection, the Polaroid camera was the best choice. Fong Bebe now had a plan. In the master bedroom of their new house, she would draw a wall above the bed and cover it with cardboard. Then she would take many photos of her and Poplar Fruit in different scenes and paste them on the wall, which would prove the course of their love. However, she still needed to improve her Polaroid selfie skills. Previously, she took a box of photos, but she was not satisfied. Poplar Fruit smiled and watched Fong Bebe raise the Polaroid camera and look at the cute pandas, hesitating to press the shutter button. He said, "We can't go in, but the keeper will help to bring Chubby Boy in front of us." As soon as he finished speaking, the door next to him opened. The keeper, who had just gone to change his clothes, came in. He smiled and nodded at Poplar Fruit, then entered the huge cage with the giant panda baby. "Uncle, why isn't there any movement?" Fong Bebe turned to ask Poplar Fruit, puzzled. "Who said so?" "Look." Poplar Fruit smiled and pointed at the cage. Kiki also stared at it intently and cried out, "Oh," as if she was the giant panda baby in the cage. In the cage, the baby pandas finally noticed the keeper walking in, and immediately became excited. One by one, they popped out from the tree trunks, tree stumps, and corners where they had been resting. They were completely different from before, when they were lazily basking in the sun and sleeping. They were especially lively as they ran towards the keeper. Their movements were very nimble. If they ran any faster, the onlookers might even think that they were little kittens. But hey, you are the national treasure pandas, okay? Why are you so spineless? What is the meaning of all of you hanging on the keeper's legs like koalas? Seeing the giant panda babies relying on the keeper's legs, Fong Bebe, who was next to them, couldn't stop smiling. Kiki held her chin with her two small hands and cried out happily, "One chubby boy, two chubby boys. Oh, so many chubby boys. Kiki really wants to bring Chubby Boy home." Don't think about it." Poplar Fruit didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he rubbed his daughter's little head and said, "Chubby Boy is happier to live here than to go home with us, because there are a lot of bamboo here that he likes to eat, and there are a lot of friends to play with him. Kiki scratched her head like her father. She thought for a moment and said, "Okay, then Kiki won't think about it." Her tone was like a little adult's, which made Poplar Fruit a little surprised. When did this little guy become so reasonable? At this time, Fong Beibei took 2 photos. The main thing was that the Polaroid photos were still relatively slow. She had to take a good picture before taking the photos, or else she would miss a more exciting scene. Under the keeper's scratching, a few of the giant panda babies finally broke free. In the end, the keeper had no choice but to carry a chubby giant panda baby on his shoulder, and another giant panda baby sitting on his left leg. He struggled to move to the window on Poplar Fruit's side. "Oh, Kiki knows Chubby Boy, is it?" Kiki only recognized it when they got closer. She nodded happily and pointed at the giant panda baby on the keeper's shoulder in her father's arms. Sure enough, through the glass window, the keeper opened the adoption sign hidden in the hair under the giant panda baby's neck. The 3 words Chubby Boy jumped out. However, Chubby Boy didn't recognize them. Chubby Boy, who was a little shy, kept hugging the keeper's arm and turning his head away, not cooperating with Poplar Fruit and the others. Although the keeper kept turning around for him, this guy was a little stubborn. In the end, it was under Chi-Chi's expectant gaze that little fatty finally turned his head around. With a simple and honest grin on his face, he blinked his little eyes under his dark eye circles and met Chi-Chi's gaze. He's probably thinking, "Kiki, do you have something delicious to eat? If not, I'm leaving." Poplar Fruit smiled mischievously. As soon as his voice fell, Chubby Boy turned his head again. The annoyed Kiki also turned her head unhappily, grabbing her father's big face and rubbing it. Poplar Fruit even smiled a little proudly. "Gotcha." Fong Beibei finally focused, but she took a picture of Poplar Fruit laughing under Kiki's devil's claws. The family's days were really interesting. After returning from the giant panda base, Poplar Fruit bought Kiki a very, very big panda doll as a second birthday gift. At night, Kiki was simply overjoyed, because she had finally waited for her own birthday. On her own birthday, Kiki could eat delicious, delicious cake and receive many birthday gifts. Whether it was eating cake or opening gifts, it was Kiki's favorite part. For the whole night, the little girl jumped and made a lot of noise, refusing to sleep even after 9 o'clock. "Papa, do you know what I wish for?" When Poplar Fruit coaxed the little girl to sleep, she giggled and twisted on the bed. "What wish?" Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Kiki waved her hand, asking Poplar Fruit to lower his head. Then she put her mouth close to her father's ear and whispered, "Kiki wishes that Papa doesn't have to work so hard and has more time to play with Kiki." Poplar Fruit was stunned for a moment. Looking at Kiki's smiling eyes, he couldn't help but laugh. He pinched Kiki's little nose, then gently lowered his head, kissed Kiki's forehead and said softly, "Kiki, sleep well. The wish you made on your birthday will definitely come true." Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 968. After Kiki's birthday, it would be the May Day holiday. All the scenic spots in Shudu City would be crowded with people. Although Poplar Fruit and the others didn't want to go back, they didn't want to be squeezed into the crowd like dumplings. Therefore, Poplar Fruit, who had prepared a long time ago, took out a large backpack from his luggage. It was filled with all kinds of outdoor equipment. Then he and his family changed into cute and handsome hiking clothes and hiking boots. Together, they followed the footsteps of the backpackers and went to the remote Daqing Mountain. As for the safety issue, Yangguo was not very worried. First of all, after the expansion of human territory, there were very few large beasts in the mountains near Shudu City. Most of the time, the beasts would avoid humans and take a detour. Second of all, Poplar Fruit was also very brave. He believed that with the taser in his pocket, which could even stun a cow, and the long watermelon knife in the backpack, plus his superhuman skills, he would be able to deal with any animal that came to him. Of course, all these preparations were in vain, because Poplar Fruit and the others didn't encounter any scary animals until they came back. They only saw 2 little monkeys, but when they saw them, they squeaked and jumped from tree to tree, then disappeared in an instant. "Little monkey, don't run." Kiki was anxious. She chased after them for 2 steps, then raised her head and looked around, but she couldn't find them. Uncle, uncle, why don't you catch them? Fong Beibei covered her mouth and snickered. She then shouted maliciously, Kiki, your father is not good. He is so good at martial arts, but he still doesn't want to help you. This time, Kiki found a way to vent her annoyance. She put her hands in front of her chest, snorted, and turned her head. Then she said like a little adult, Papa is not good. Kiki doesn't want to play with you anymore. Poplar Fruit shook his head with a wry smile. He thought to himself, if I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have performed martial arts for them. Man-made scenic spots had the charm of man-made scenic spots, because people could trace the history and find the traces of the glory of their predecessors. They could also admire the ingenious human architectural art in amazement. But now they were walking in this strange mountain forest. Maybe some people had walked here before, but civilization hadn't left any footprints here. So they could feel the real harmony of nature and appreciate the real natural wonders. For example, more than half an hour ago, Poplar Fruit and the others spread out a blanket, sat on the ground, and admired the bamboo forest while having a picnic. It was really spectacular. Perhaps it would be more appropriate to describe it as a sea of bamboos. As far as the eye could see, the bamboos were all towering into the clouds. Each section was as thick as a human's arm. Every time the wind blew through the forest, the bamboo leaves in the forest would rustle, and bamboo leaves would fall from the sky. This scene was extremely romantic. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Fong Beibei shouted excitedly. She had just taken a group photo of the 3 of them, and now she gave the Polaroid to Poplar Fruit. She ran to the side, picked up a slender bamboo, and posed with a smile. She asked Poplar Fruit to take a picture of her in an ancient costume, while the bamboo leaves were falling. No, you have to raise your hand like this. The martial arts director couldn't stand it anymore. Poplar Fruit took the camera and walked over to teach Fong Beibei how to pose. But soon he was angrily beaten by Fong Beibei. What kind of pose is this? What I want is the artistic conception, okay? Well, Poplar Fruit had to manually shake a few bamboos to artificially create a scene of bamboo leaves falling from the sky. He took a picture of Fong Beibei and Kiki. The little girl happily ran up to join in the fun. After looking at the photo, Poplar Fruit still felt that it was a little lacking. Fong Beibei's movements were too soft. It wasn't even as good as Kiki's. However, Fong Beibei couldn't see it herself. She liked to hide it in the interlayer of Poplar Fruit's backpack. They chose a slightly spacious space in the bamboo forest to have their picnic here. Fong Beibei was busy taking down the picnic blanket, and Kiki was also very obedient to help Beibei spread out the picnic blanket. Poplar Fruit stepped on the thick ground. There was a difference between the natural bamboo forest and the artificial one. Because of the sedimentation for a long time, the bamboo leaves covered the ground like a soft blanket. It was very comfortable. He had an idea and turned to look at Fong Beibei and Kiki. Bao Bao Kiki, how about I show you a set of real kung fu? Poplar Fruit smiled and said, in this classic scene of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. He was still a little upset that Fong Beibei didn't pay attention to the kung fu that he was most confident in. Fong Beibei helplessly looked at Poplar Fruit, who threw the backpack on the ground and didn't help anymore. She was already very familiar with Poplar Fruit's character. She knew that Poplar Fruit was now as stubborn as a child. Although Poplar Fruit was usually more mature, he was forced by the responsibility of raising Kiki. In fact, he was only a 25-year-old boy. Fortunately, Kiki was more supportive. The little girl jumped up from the ground and clapped desperately. She was so excited that her little face was red. Poplar Fruit broke 2 bamboo sticks that were about 2 fingers thick and made them into knives. He snorted twice and used both hands, waving them. He was using the 2-handed Miao Dao that Xiong Kuhu taught him. However, when he performed this kung fu, he removed the murderous aura. Although he waved it fiercely, he always felt that something was missing. After a round, Poplar Fruit's face wasn't red nor was he out of breath. He stood up and asked with a smile, how was it? Handsome, Papa is so handsome. Kiki gave her father a thumbs up and giggled. However, Fong Beibei curled her lips and said, it's not good, it's not good. In the movies it's very elegant. Unlike you, you can't even fly with a leaf. Hey, that's a movie special effect. Poplar Fruit helplessly looked at Fong Beibei, who was definitely deliberately messing with him. The latter was secretly laughing and didn't dare to look at his eyes. However, who was Poplar Fruit? It could be said that he was the most talented man in the world today. How could he not be able to do these small requests that Fong Beibei mentioned? Immediately acting, Poplar Fruit changed to a longer bamboo stick. This was his sword. Not only did he not use the knife, but he also planned to use the Tai Chi fist to practice the sword. This was indeed something that could be figured out. Moreover, with Poplar Fruit's increased speed, the bamboo danced into a green light, as if cutting and dispersing the light spots that were stealing from the top of his head. Moreover, in order to pursue the effect of the dancing leaves, Poplar Fruit used the 8 steps meteor kick. His feet kicked the ground and countless bamboo leaves danced in the air. Poplar Fruit rushed in. The bamboo sword turned into a green protective cover that could not be seen clearly, blocking the falling bamboo leaves outside. The leaves fell. The light converged. Poplar Fruit withdrew his sword and stood upright. Because it was the first time he tried, Poplar Fruit did not do his best, and a few leaves fell on his head. However, in a place where Fong Beibei and the others did not see, many of the bamboo leaves that fell before were shattered into pieces. Although it was not perfect, Poplar Fruit received cheers, including Fong Beibei. Although Fong Beibei deliberately angered Poplar Fruit just now, but this time, she was really mesmerized by Poplar Fruit's handsome bamboo sword dance. When Poplar Fruit came back, she could not help but hug Poplar Fruit's arm, pouted her small mouth, and looked at Poplar Fruit with blurred eyes. How could Poplar Fruit not understand? He was quite proud, and kissed Fong Beibei's lips hard. Who told you not to believe me? Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations greater than or equal to *, that you're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.